026. Landmine explosion. Just as Wukong's finger was raised, a man's voice suddenly came from a distance, and then the ground under his feet began to expand rapidly. His observation haki instinctively reminded him of the coming of danger. Room. Bang. The violent explosion resounded directly through the sky, and a terrifying deep pit appeared on the ground, which was 10 meters long and more than 20 meters deep. The power had completely surpassed the artillery shells. Didn't you kill him? A man came out and said in a very cold voice. Wearing a helmet, a mask with round lenses, suture scars on both sides of his eyes, a dark blue long windbreaker, and metal decorations such as gears on his clothes. The whole person gave people a feeling of a cold motorcyclist. Doflamingo really likes me. Is he another cadre? Wukong's voice suddenly came, teasingly. All the pirates raised their heads nervously. On the highest ruins, Wukong was standing on the top with his hands around the moon. Looking at the man who suddenly came out below with great interest. Wukong claims to be a devil op fruit user. You must not underestimate someone who can kill Mahabas, or you will die. The man spoke very directly and told Wukong's information right away, seemingly calm but actually solemn. So you set up this ambush for me? Gladius, who belongs to the Spade Army. Wukong opened his hands and smiled excitedly. Yes. Gladius pushed the round lens on his mask and said very calmly, These trash can't do anything to me. Or are these trash your Don Quixote pirates only? Wukong asked with a wicked smile. Skyscraper explosion. Although Gladius still had no expression on his face, anyone who knew him could feel that he was angry. His left hand was aimed at Wukong's position, and the building under him began to swell more violently. I see, Wukong said softly. Boom. Lie down, lie down. The explosion was as violent as a mushroom cloud rising to the sky. All the pirates fell to the ground in a hurry. However, the violent impact caused by the explosion still set off endless impact. If it were not for the help of the pirates, most of them would be blown away. Bang! Gladius suddenly turned around and threw a punch. A straight punch collided with the fist that appeared out of thin air. The next moment, his face froze. The terrifying strange force, mixed with an almost irresistible terrifying impact, came towards him. Arm exploded. Boom! The arm swelled violently, and there was another violent explosion. Wukong hooked his fingers and whispered, Room! You guys actually... Gladius waited until the smoke cleared, saw the situation in front of Wukong, and said coldly with anger, These people are still good as a human wall. Wukong shrugged and walked out from behind the pirates who had been blown to pieces, smiling. It's really worthy of the explosion fruit. The battlefield prepared in advance is really amazing. Wukong looked at the violent explosion and said with interest. Gladius didn't say any more nonsense, just pointed at all the pirates and said coldly, Retreat. Use long-range bullets to attack. Yes. Although the pirates were angry, they still retreated quickly. Soon, cannons were set up all around, and more guns were set up, forming a tight encirclement around Wukong. Don't move. Gladius stopped all the pirates and said coldly, But my lord. Shut up. Gladius's scolding immediately made all the pirates shut up. Among them, Gladius had absolute majesty. You will die. Wukong laughed. Room slash. Wukong suddenly appeared in front of Gladius, hooked his fingers and held his right hand in the air, as if holding an invisible blade, and swept it with a knife. Full body explosion. Gladius's whole body swelled up quickly, and instantly swelled into a huge sphere. Wukong smiled faintly. If the op fruit can be cracked so easily, then is it worthy of being called the ultimate op fruit? Armament haki enhancement. Another roar. Wukong's attack has arrived as expected. The next moment his face froze. Gladius' waist was cut open, but because of the obstruction of armament haki, it actually formed a physical attack, and the explosion came. Boom. Swish. Wukong suddenly appeared in the distance, spitting out a mouthful of dust, and cursed inwardly. Damn it. Gladius actually detonated the bomb prepared in advance. It seems that this time he is really well prepared. Exploding hair. Followed by millions of countless hairs that looked like steel wires, covering all of Wukong's retreat routes. But let me show you the combination of op fruit and ton pressure fruit. Wukong raised his hand and smiled confidently. Room, gravity, space, 100 tons. 027. The purple space unfolded again, but this time it was different from the past. It seemed to be very different. Spots of black that had never existed seemed to shroud the purple space, vaguely existing but unclear, very strange. Boom. The earth suddenly roared, and suddenly broke apart layer by layer. The speed of the explosive hair that was rushing towards it suddenly slowed down, as if it was suppressed by a terrifying force. Kneel down. Zwakong held his forehead with one hand and laughed wildly. Search, search, search. A layer of extremely strange, very faint but real black gas slowly rose up along Zwakong's body. Under his palm, the black hair blown away by the wind revealed a scarlet pupil, which was like a devil's eyes. At this moment, Zwakong truly proved his title of Demon Crack Crack. That explosive hair that was oppressed by the terrifying force all fell to the ground, and a violent explosion occurred the moment it landed. Boom. The violent explosion once again formed a mushroom cloud, and the ground was actually flattened. The explosion just now was not only caused by the explosive hair, but also by countless mines that Gladius had prepared long ago. Is this the power of the Op fruit? Gladius said in horror. Of course not. How is it possible? Gladius's eyes suddenly widened, and he said in horror. Bang! A punch hit Gladius's abdomen. The strong blow directly formed an explosive attack. The punch that penetrated the body directly shattered a ruin behind Gladius into powder. Boom! Another violent explosion. The ruins that were shattered into powder exploded again. Ahem. Kneeling on the ground uncontrollably, Gladius raised his head with difficulty and said with a trembling voice, You guy, don't think it's over, it's just the beginning. B******************. D. Go to hell. Go to hell? Zwakong sneered. His palm reached for Gladius's throat, who was kneeling on the ground. Suddenly, his consciousness jumped, reminding him of the danger approaching. What is this? Zwakong muttered, almost subconsciously retreating. Advertisement boom, another explosion. A deep pit was blown out of the ground. The pit was only the size of a fist, but it was extremely deep. Even the corresponding clouds in the sky seemed to be shattered in an instant. If such a force hit the body directly, even if his body was strong, it could definitely penetrate him. Even with the recovery of the Op fruit, Zwakong was not a masochist. Why did he have to resist the attack that he could avoid? Damn guy, even the piercing explosion couldn't kill him? Gladius didn't expect that his carefully prepared attack would fail, and couldn't help cursing secretly. What a dangerous attack, even if I was hit by this move. I'm afraid I would be seriously injured, right? Zwakong looked at Gladius, and said solemnly and interestingly, It's a pity that I didn't kill you. Gladius cursed. Gladius stood up trembling. His abdomen was already burnt black. Zwakong's punch just now directly shattered his abdomen. If it weren't for the enhancement of armament haki, he would have been pierced or cut in half and died. Okay, the game is over here. Zwakong tilted his head and said coldly. His cold eyes did not take Gladius seriously at all, and the facts proved that he had the ability to easily kill Gladius, but here were all explosions set by him. In this domain of his strength almost showed geometric growth. Sure enough, some fruit abilities are extremely terrifying if they are prepared in advance. Zwakong thought secretly in his heart. As cadres, Mahabais and Gladius are actually almost the same in strength, but the former can be easily dealt with, while the latter is very troublesome. Because Gladius prepared first, the entire minion island was set up with explosions by Gladius. With the ability of the explosion fruit, there are almost mines and bombs everywhere here, and Gladius did not fight him head-on, but was always fighting. Advertisement room, / Zwakong's development of Op fruit was very simple. He did not develop so many moves, but started from the origin. The moves he developed were the most basic and most used ones. Swoosh, swoosh. What a terrifying attack. Gladius immediately fled from the spot with the help of observation haki. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat and said in horror. The original ground had been completely cut into cracks, and the cracks were very smooth, as if they had never been hurt. Almost done. Gladius looked at the pirates who were smiling around him, and suddenly opened his hands and roared. Explosion, blast heaven. Huh. Zwakong frowned. Boom. The overwhelming explosion enveloped the entire island. Read books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, activity time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 028. Go to hell. Go to hell. Devil. Pa. Not bad, just a little devil. Ha ha ha. The pirates laughed wildly and cursed. They had long wanted to skin and eat Zwakong's cruelty. Explode. Gladius pointed his hands at the void and shouted in a low voice. Boom. Boom. The cannons roared and smoke filled the air. The shouts and killings that soared into the sky were full of murderous aura that was enough to make people feel terrified. The terrifying blood filled the entire island, and the gunpowder smoke from the cannons was full of pungent smells. One by one, the shells and bullets became huge in the air, the ground became distorted, and all the ruins began to explode. In an instant, the violent explosion that almost covered the entire island filled the battlefield. Don't stop, don't stop. Feeling that the artillery fire had weakened, Gladius immediately shouted loudly. He didn't dare to stop attacking. He didn't know whether Zwakong was dead. Although the battle was short, Gladius understood how terrible Zwakong's terror was. At that time, he had surpassed the level of Marine Vice Admiral and was heading for the level of Marine Admiral. What was more important was that Zwakong was only 14 years old this year, and he had such strength at such an age. Gladius could not imagine how terrible Zwakong would be when he really grew up in the future. This was the best opportunity. Gladius must kill Zwakong, definitely kill Zwakong, and never give him a chance to resist. Boom boom. The ground was completely plowed flat, and the entire island was completely shrouded in the smoke of artillery fire. Gladius bent over and stood in the smoke, laughing in a low voice. So, should we kill this guy? Advertisement, cough cough. Suddenly Gladius coughed violently, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of the corner of his mouth. He said bitterly, "It seems that this injury is permanent this time." Gladius was prepared at the earliest. Those who can kill mobs must not rely on luck. All shells and bullets are blessed with the explosion fruit, and they can be detonated immediately when they are used. But Gladius couldn't keep up with such intense consumption. He was left with permanent hidden injuries. No doctor could heal such injuries. Unless, how is it possible? Gladius laughed at himself. You are right. The hidden injuries in your body can only be cured by the healing fruit except op fruit. Zwakong's voice suddenly came out, cold and ruthless. Is this impossible? Gladius fell to the ground in a hurry and said in horror. Zwakong's figure slowly walked out of the smoke. His face was cold, and his whole body looked messy. Although his strength was very strong, it was definitely not at the level of Admiral. With such an attack, Vice Admiral was almost certain to die in it. Even Admiral would not feel well. The explosion was too terrifying. It was enough to be called a national-level explosion. Is it strange? Zwakong wiped the dust off his face and said calmly, "How could you still be alive? How did you survive such an explosion?" Gladius said in fear. His words were full of disbelief. He really couldn't believe how Zwakong survived. In his opinion, unless he was a strong man above Admiral, how could he survive such an explosion? It's really amazing. Zwakong didn't answer, but said coldly. At the same time, he raised his palm, and the purple light bloomed completely. At this moment, Gladius was just a lamb, and he didn't even have the strength to stand up. Someone is coming. Zwakong suddenly saw the distance through the smoke and said interestingly. Advertisement. Gladius felt a little happy. Could it be reinforcements? I'm afraid so. Minion Island is a completely isolated island. If it weren't for checking Zwakong's whereabouts every year, no one would come. Now, I'm afraid only his own reinforcements would come. Sister is the big brother back then. The cute little Loli said very cutely. Big brother was driven away by these bastards. The beautiful and intellectual girl said angrily. What should sister do? Little Lolita asked in a low voice, obviously undecided. The girl said firmly, Big brother saved us back then. Now big brother is attacked. We must help. Sugar, you should be careful to protect yourself. I will kill these pirates. Sister, you have to be careful. Sugar said carefully immediately. Snow Rabbit. The beautiful girl shouted and suddenly flew into the air. Her beautiful body turned into snowflakes, dancing quickly. Endless snowflakes flew out of her body and turned into cute little white rabbits, just like beautiful snow rabbits. What is this? Puff. The pirate was hit before he could even react. His body was shattered, but the small snow rabbit had terrifying power. Snow fruit? Sugar. Zwakong whispered softly. Then he said with a funny smile, Is it Monet and Sugar? It seems that they have eaten snow fruit and childish fruit. Are they the two little guys from that year? Reading is fun every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, activity time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 029. What's going on? Damn it. It's Logia Demon Fruit Power. Damn it. How could a Logia user appear on this isolated island? Go to hell. Monet said in a low voice while floating in the air. Swish. The coldness in the sky suddenly disappeared without a trace, which made everyone stunned. You know, this is Minion Island, and coldness is the most normal thing, okay? But no one noticed that Monet was full of cold air at this moment. With his hands slightly closed, a violent snowflake completely emerged from his palms. Monet whispered, "Snowstorm." Huh. The snowflakes between his hands formed a hole with the cold wind from his mouth. The ultra-high-speed rotation actually formed a terrifying snow tornado, and in just a moment, the snow tornado swept the entire island. Run. They were enveloped by the snow tornado before they could even scream. The ultra-low temperature froze their body temperature and their body temperature. They were swept and shattered by the violent power of the snow tornado, but the island was swept away in an instant. The violent snow tornado swept the entire battlefield. In Zoan's opinion, Monet, who had not fully developed the true power of the snow fruit, was not as good as a real strong man, but it was enough to deal with these small fish. Impossible, impossible. I have clearly explored this island carefully. How could there be someone else? And Gladius, who knelt on the ground, said in disbelief. The snow fruit is the fruit of Logia. If she wants to hide in such an environment, how can you find her alone? Zoan said indifferently and disdainfully. Advertisement. Gladius knelt on the ground. He could no longer move. He also knew that he really lost this time, and the whole army was annihilated. Even without Monet, the result would not change. Even though he had prepared in advance and his moves would even cause him to suffer terrible hidden injuries, they still couldn't seriously injure Zoan. From that moment on, the battle was over. Feel the despair. Zoan laughed cruelly. Yes, it's really good that you can develop snow fruit to this extent at such a young age without anyone teaching you. A faint voice came out from the smoke and snow, saying calmly. Monet slowly fell from the air and couldn't help but say, "Are you really the same person back then?" In fact, Monet didn't dare to confirm it. She didn't come here for nothing all these years. She knew Doflamingo's identity and how terrible he was, so he really didn't dare to be sure whether Zoan, who was besieged by so many cadres back then, really survived. It's the real deal. Swish. A strong wind suddenly swept in, and Zoan walked out of the smoke with slow steps, holding the half-dead Gladius's head with one hand, and smiled faintly. Sister? The cute little sugar Lolita ran over immediately, hid behind Monet, looked at Zoan carefully, and called softly, "Be good." Monet turned back to comfort her sister and said gently. Looking at her sister, Monet bit her rosy lips slightly, turned around and suddenly knelt on the ground. "Sister, what are you doing?" Sugar ran over immediately and said nervously, "Sandal, kneel down." Monet said firmly. Advertisement. Listening to her sister's tone, although Sandal was confused, she had been taken care of by her sister for the past 2 years. She was very obedient and knelt on the ground with her sister. Zoan's smile became more and more intense, and he also wanted to see what they were going to do. "Monet, see the master." Unexpectedly, Monet kowtowed and said respectfully. Sandang looked at Monet and followed suit and said, "Sandang, meet the master." "Very interesting. Why do you want me to be your master?" Zoan walked to the 2 women and stopped and asked condescendingly. "There are many reasons, but I, Monet, only recognize you as my master," Monet said very firmly. Zoan, who knew Monet's character, knew that Monet was a very loyal person. Once she had determined something, she would never regret it, and would never betray her master even if she died. Zoan smiled and nodded. "It's interesting, but why should I accept you? Wouldn't it be better to kill you and take away your fruit abilities?" Zoan's voice suddenly became cruel and said ferociously, "Monet is already the master's servant, and I will never regret it even if I die," Monet said very firmly. 2 interesting women. Zoan smiled in his heart. How could he not see that Monet was a stubborn person who would not change once he had chosen himself, while Sandang had no ability to make his own choices and would do whatever his sister did? "I happen to be in need of a secretary. Can you take the position?" Zoan suddenly said. "Of course, no problem, master." Monet stood up with Sandang, bowed slightly, and answered confidently, "Have fun reading every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 030. What a pity, she's not a cook. Zoan thought helplessly. Although he found a cute little Lolita who can pervert, a secretary who works as a secretary when there is something to do and a secretary when there is nothing to do, Zoan still wants to find a cook. After all, eating is still very important. These two girls are the last memories of the hometown, right? Zoan whispered softly. Monet and Shatang, who followed closely behind Zoan, smiled sweetly at the same time. The cute little Shatang was too small to keep up with the pace of the two. She couldn't help but gently pull the corner of Zoan's clothes to share the pressure. Master, Monet immediately said anxiously. No problem. Zoan looked at Shatang, suddenly smiled and hugged her in his arms, and said with a smile, Let's go. Yes, master. Monet followed Zoan's pace and said respectfully. The appearance of loyalty is so full that it can be equated with some animals. Monet is such a person. She will not change the master she recognizes. Even if he wants to take her life, she will never hesitate. What's more, her two sisters were saved by Zoan in the life and death crisis, and they found food and strength to survive in Zoan's cave in recent years. Master. Sugar lay in Zoan's arms obediently, mumbling. Maybe she was tired, or frightened by the impact of the battle, and she fell asleep sweetly soon. These two girls. Laozi is a demon, but he trusts me so easily. Zoan shook his head helplessly and sighed in his heart. In fact, Zoan still has a good impression of these two little girls who are considered his hometown. Although they also have powerful devil fruit, snow fruit is Logia, and childlike fruit is definitely one of the top Paramecia, but who makes them beautiful? Well, this is the most important reason for Zoan. If two men stood here, Zoan would kill them without hesitation. Anyway, in Zoan's mind, the gap between men and women is so big. After all, as a demon, you can do whatever you want. If you like, keep you. If you don't like, kill you. Monet, do you know where Gladius stores the ship? Zoan suddenly asked. Advertisement, I know. Monet immediately followed behind and said softly. Take me there. Yes, sir. Neither of them is a weakling, not to mention that such weather is completely his own amusement park for Monet. Along the way, Monet turned into snowflakes flying all over the sky from time to time. Soon the two arrived at the place where Gladius hid the ship. It must be said that Gladius chose a really good place, which is extremely hidden. The most important thing is that this ship is very large, and it can accommodate at least thousands of people. After all, the number of men led by Gladius is not at the same level as Mahaba's. Monet, go and get rid of all the people left on the ship, and don't leave any. Zoan looked at the big ship and suddenly said coldly, Yes, master. Monet smiled very elegantly and said gently, Search. Snowflakes floated, and Monet turned into snowflakes and rushed towards the pirate ship. Soon, there were bursts of roars and shouts of killing on the ship, but these sounds soon ended. It seems that finding a subordinate is still good. At least these things that will reduce your reputation don't have to be done by yourself. Zoan thought silently and jumped up and landed on the pirate ship. Room. The purple space flashed by, and all the corpses disappeared in an instant. Zoan threw Gladius aside and said, Don't pretend to be dead. Although you have been abused inhumanely with your body, you should have woken up long ago. What do you want to do? Gladius struggled to open his eyes and asked coldly. Don't move. A snow knife made of snowflakes fell on Gladius' throat. Monet had walked behind him without knowing when, and said coldly, Snow fruit, so loyal. Gladius exclaimed. Zoan said, I didn't kill you because you are still useful. Monet, go get all the din mushy on this ship. Monet nodded. Advertisements. Zoan stopped talking, but Panchi sat on the ground, while Sandu was very cute resting in Zoan's arms. This little Lolita who looked only 7 or 8 years old was very cute, making Zoan feel that his soul was about to awaken. Master! Monet was very fast, and a row of 8 din mushy were placed in front of Zoan. After scanning, Zoan picked up one of the pale gold din mushy with flamingo patterns and asked, Is this Doflamingo's din mushy? So what? Gladius said coldly. Very good. Zoan smiled and nodded. Bruce. Gladius, what's the matter? A man's voice came from the din mushy, full of absolute confidence. Hearing this voice, Zoan's eyes burst into murderous intent, but his tone was filled with a faint smile, and he said, Doflamingo, long time no see. The iconic laugh sounded, and Doflamingo laughed. Little devil, you dare to appear in front of me? Why not? Zwakong said. At the same time, he gave Monet a look, and Monet immediately stepped on Gladius' thigh. Crack. Ah. The shrill screams cut through the sky. Have fun reading every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 031. How about Doflamingo's voice? Zwakong grinned and looked like a devil, asking evilly, Little devil, are you irritating me? Do you know the consequences of irritating me? Doflamingo's voice was still smiling, but anyone could hear the coldness in his tone. Doflamingo killed Corazon. From that moment on, he had no relatives. All he had was his own pirate group and his own family. Whether it was true or false, he really regarded the people in his family as his own family. And now Zwakong dared to do such a thing in front of him, which was simply an insult to himself. This is just the beginning. Doflamingo's things back then, I will let you slowly experience despair. Zwakong said coldly. Despair? Little devil, do you know? You are talking to God. Doflamingo laughed arrogantly. Zwakong curled his lips in disdain and said sarcastically, God? In order to avoid the War of the Four Emperors, he came to North Blue to trade in name, but in fact he was just a poor guy who came to North Blue to seek refuge. Little devil, Doflamingo said coldly and slowly. Are you angry? Anexion, you just wait in New World, and use your death to establish my reputation as a murderer. Zwakong made a gesture of wiping his neck and said murderously, Den Den Mushi is indeed a good thing, especially this kind of advanced Den Den Mushi, which imitates Zwakong's movements vividly, and the coldness and sarcastic smile on his face are even more touching. Doflamingo laughed wildly, and even couldn't help but hold his forehead. Little devil, I'm waiting for you on this throne, provided that you are really qualified to come to me and feel the despair of the sea. Doflamingo gave a signature smile, laughing wildly. I said that I, the devil, will pull you, the god, off the throne. Finally, I'll tell you one thing. North Blue, do you still need it? Zwakong said with a smile. Crack. Advertisement. The Den Den Mushi was crushed. Zwakong stood up and walked in front of Gladius, stretched out his hand to pick it up. Little devil. Doflamingo's smile was very cold, and the cold voice made people feel a burst of piercing. Bruce. What's the matter, young master? The very determined man's voice came out of the Den Den Mushi, saying calmly. Doflamingo has regained his composure and said coldly, The little devil has appeared again in North Blue. I need you to find a way to expose his information and let the naval headquarters send people. Yes, young master, said the man. Den Den Mushi hung up. Doflamingo stood up in front of the window and said with a cold smile, Little ghost, the game is never as simple as real swords and guns. Master, I won't let you go. Gladius was pinched by Zwakong's neck, and his voice was trembling but very resolute. I don't need you to tell me what kind of person Doflamingo is. Zwakong nodded calmly. You will. Ahem. Gladius suddenly coughed violently, and his heart suddenly exploded. The purple space enveloped Gladius, and his heart exploded just like that. I'm not interested in your nonsense, Zwakong said in a cold voice. Ding dong. Congratulations to the master for killing Gladius, obtaining 0.5 copy points, and swallowing the boom boom fruit. Sizzle. Zwakong could hear a clear tearing sound in his ear. Gladius lost his life forever, but something was added to his body. Master. The confused little sugar just opened his eyes and saw Zwakong actually began to swell up, and shouted hurriedly. Advertisement, humph. With a cold snort, Zwakong's body slowly recovered. He patted the little sugar's head, and threw Gladius into the sea with a casual flick of his hand. He comforted. It's okay. Master, you actually got a new devil fruit ability? Monet said in astonishment. Don't make a fuss. It's just plundering the other party's ability through the power of op fruit. Zwakong rolled his eyes, hugged the little sugar in his arms, and said helplessly to Monet. Monet was still surprised. But this is really amazing. I have never heard of someone getting 2 devil fruits. What's so strange about this? Dark fruit can also take away devil fruit ability. Op fruit is on par with dark fruit, so devil fruit can do the same. Zwakong pouted and said, as if you were making a fuss. Some things can't be told the truth, so it's better not to tell the truth. Master, please wait. Monet suddenly remembered something and said immediately, then left in a hurry. Zuokong was confused, but Sanding said cutely, Master, my sister and I found 3 devil fruits on this island. We ate one each, and the remaining one was collected by my sister. Zuokong was dumbfounded for no reason. He had tried so hard to find the devil fruit that year, but there were actually 3 on this island? It felt like you went out to make money, but you ended up with millions of dollars under your Kong at home. It's just a rip-off. Master, I'm back. In the past 2 years, I have secretly investigated and found that this devil fruit is called the silent fruit. Soon Monet took the devil fruit back and said amazingly, Silent fruit? Zuokong said in astonishment. Looking at the devil fruit in Monet's hand, Zuokong sighed. Isn't it called planting willows by accident? Reading books every day on the 11th day is fun. Top up 100 and get 500 VIP points. Top up now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 032. The sea is always the most violent and the craziest. No one can always dominate the topic of the sea. A year ago, the devil's Wukong, who was offered a bounty of 80 million, appeared out of nowhere and killed 2 cadres of the Don Quixote pirates, Mahabas and Gladius. This forced the naval headquarters to send Vice Admiral Mole to North Blue for investigation, but nothing was found after the investigation. This person disappeared again. The helpless naval headquarters had to increase Wukong's bounty to 120 million, becoming the first existence to become a supernova without entering the Grand Line. But this incident only caused a temporary storm. Today, the world is looking at the new world. Since Whitebeard, Edward Newgate reached the top and became the first 4 emperors 3 years ago. In this year, Big Mom Charlotte Linlin led the Big Mom pirates under her command to successfully reach the top and became the second 4 emperors, occupying the Tato land kingdom centered on Cake Island. The remaining 2, Kaido and Shanks, have already taken an absolute advantage. To outsiders, reaching the top is just a matter of time. Another major event was that Crocodile challenged Whitebeard in this year, but failed and had one arm cut off. He returned to the Grand Line, but was recruited by Marine to become the second 7 warlords of the sea. Beast Island, Best Island. The Beast Island, which should have been spring-like all year round, was now covered with heavy snow. Wind and snow. Monet flapped his wings and soared into the air, emitting bursts of cold air, and shouted in a low voice. The strong wind mixed with heavy snow quickly gathered into one in the air. Countless snowflakes actually gathered into diamond-shaped crystals. The size of the crystals was not large, but it made people feel terrified and emitted a sharp light like a dagger. Swish, swish, swish. Room gravity space 100,000 tons. Standing directly below, Zuokong hooked his finger and whispered softly. Advertisement. The purple space immediately unfolded, becoming even larger and more perfect. Monet in the air immediately spread his wings and flew up into the sky, leaving Zuokong's space. But the snow and ice crystals were instantly crushed into snowflakes by the terrifying pressure and scattered in the air. If it's just like this, Monet, you disappoint me too much. Zuokong's figure appeared behind Monet at some point, saying boringly, Bang! A kick was made, and a deep pit was suddenly kicked out on the ground. The black color represented that it contained a powerful armament hockey. Master, Monet has never been lazy. Although his body was pierced, Monet still smiled calmly. Snow knife. Monet swung his arm, and a snow feather fell into his hand. In an instant, a long knife emerged, and the long knife was covered with black hockey and stabbed horizontally. That's right. Zuokong raised his arm to block the long sword that was stabbing straight at him. Armament hockey blocked armament hockey and smiled. Zuokong was not surprised by the scene just now. Although armament hockey was the nemesis of Logia, there were also special circumstances. If the speed of naturalization was faster than your attack speed, then you could dodge your attack. Of course, Monet's strength was not as good as Zuokong, but she was very familiar with Zuokong and could probably guess Zuokong's attack method, so she naturalized one step in advance. Bang! The long fist suddenly exerted force, and the uncontrolled huge force knocked Monet down from the sky, blasting a deep pit on the ground, and snowflakes fell all over the sky. Cough, cough. Monet coughed violently, struggled to get up, and said helplessly, Sure enough, I am still not your opponent, master. I can catch up with you, as secretary. Am I still your master? Zuokong proudly fell from the sky and said lightly, Yes, my master, but I don't know how sucrose is. Monet asked curiously. Advertisement. It is obvious that every time she and her master finish sparring, Sugar should come to watch. Why didn't she come today? I left that little girl on the boat. She has been lazy for a while, so I doubled the training today. Zwakong walked towards the boat and said calmly. Zwakong said calmly, but Monet was not calm. What do you mean by double the weight? That is 2,000 kilograms of weight? No wonder Sugar didn't come. It's not that she didn't come, but she fainted from exhaustion. Although Zwakong can train himself for a year, he can't train others at all. Therefore, in addition to teaching in fruit development and armament hockey and observation hockey training, Zwakong has developed the simplest method, gravity training. Through the space of op fruit and the gravity of the ton pressure fruit, the room gravity space trick is directly formed into something similar to a gravity device to train the two girls. The effect of this year is very good. Is Master Sugar okay? As a sister, Monet was justified in worrying about her sister and asked nervously, "Don't worry, that little girl is fine. I never expected her to fight, but she can't be completely incompetent." Zwakong said calmly, "Yes, sir." After knowing that his sister was fine, Monet drove the ship to set sail. The training was almost done, and it was time to set sail. Set off again from Minion Island, aiming for the new world. Let the world see the horror of the devil. The goal is to kill Doflamingo. Have fun reading every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 033. Master, where is our next destination? Monet complained helplessly while steering the ship. Is it easy for me to be a secretary? I have to act as the helmsman, navigator, fighter, cook, and even the maid. I have to take care of Zwakong and Sugar. Should I ask for a raise and promotion? However, this life is given by the master. Although it is a little tiring, it is worth it. Thinking about it, Monet suddenly blushed shyly and murmured softly. Back then, the barrelless pirates slaughtered the entire population of Minion Island, and Monet and Sugar were the only two who survived. Although Zwakong didn't know, they were indeed saved by Zwakong. Later, Zwakong left Minion Island, and the two women relied on the supplies left by Zwakong and the devil fruit found in the cave to get through the most difficult period. Where are you going? Zwakong asked softly when he suddenly heard Monet's question. Master, where are we going? Sandang, who was leaning on Zwakong's arms and twisting her little body comfortably, also asked curiously. The target is North Blue. Zwakong suddenly smiled. North Blue? Monet asked back, then smiled, quickly turned the bow and said, Yes. Boom. The huge ship began its mission, carrying the enemy of its master to destroy its master's city. Boom. Hole. Do you know whose territory this is? The pirate's lower body was buried in snowflakes, but he still roared angrily. Whose territory? Monet smiled and tilted his head. The wings on his back, condensed with snowflakes, looked very beautiful. He asked softly. The gorgeous courtyard has become a ruin, with snowflakes flying all over the sky. Marine and pirates have already arrived in the snowflakes. Monet stood in the center of the courtyard with a smile on his lips. Advertisement, of course I know. This is Doflamingo's territory. But this is where I'm looking for. Monet chuckled. Newcomers who don't know their own limits. Your arrogance will cost you your life. The pirate roared madly. Unfortunately, his life has been covered by snowflakes, and everything has disappeared without a trace. Wind blowing snow. Monet soared into the air, and the more than 10 bags of vellay were also carried into the air by the snowflakes. The blowing snow in the sky turned into ice crystals and covered the entire courtyard, accompanied by a cold and biting wind. Boom. The courtyard exploded. 200 million vellays. This underground trading place is really poor. Monet curled his lips and said disdainfully. Turned into snowflakes and wrapped vellay, flying away. Is this the place? Sugar asked cutely while holding a red bear doll. Little sister, this is the place you are looking for. The pirate looked at Sugar with evil eyes and said evilly. Then you go to hell. Sugar bowed to the pirate and said cutely. Puff. A toy knight's lance suddenly pierced through the pirate's chest. The pirate struggled to look at the position of his chest and fell to the ground. A knight doll that looked only the size of an adult's fist and wore black armor with black wings similar to wings floated in the air. The knights are charging, Sugar said loudly. There was no answer, but hundreds of doll knights rushed into the courtyard and started a bloody killing. A bunch of poor ghosts. Sugar looked at the 6 or 7 bags of vellay and said unwillingly. Advertisement, let's go, knights. Holding the bear doll, Sugar jumped away, and hundreds of night dolls followed closely behind him, dragging Bailey and following behind Sugar. The childlike fruit can turn humans into dolls. As for what kind of doll it becomes, it is up to humans to imagine and create it. Under Zwakong's teaching, Sugar created this doll that looks like the knights. Each night doll is created by integrating 10 pirates. It has powerful combat power. Those who underestimate them have fallen to the ground and are sleeping forever. Is it over? Zwakong said lazily, leaning on the penetrating recliner. Monet and Sugar boarded the pirate ship separately, and Bailey was thrown aside like worthless rags. It was really worthless. In the past 3 months, Zwakong and the two women swept across the entire North Blue and swept away the underground exchange of Doflamingo in the entire North Blue. Money is almost not money. Does Marine have any reaction? Zwakong continued to ask. It's still the same as usual, just a formality. Monet took back the snowflakes, picked up the lazy Sugar on the side, and explained. That's right. Marine has long disliked Doflamingo. How could he really attack him? Zwakong said with a smile. North Blue has been completely cleared, and Zwakong even got help from Marine. Marine, Doflamingo, you all have your own plans, but I'm not a puppet to be manipulated by you. This game has just begun. Zwakong stood up and looked at the island that belonged to Doflamingo. He put his hands together, and the purple space unfolded, and the air began to expand rapidly. Room air bomb. Boom. Have fun reading every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 034. Little devil. Doflamingo's voice was as gloomy as a devil from hell, whispering coldly. Master, with marine strength, can't they catch that little devil? Pika stood behind Doflamingo and asked in a very strange way. Toribol sneered. It's not that they can't catch him, but they don't want to catch him. Marine has been angry with us for a long time. They nominally sent people to clear out the little devil, but in fact they just arranged people to finish off the tail every time. The whole North Blue was indulged by them, and they blocked all our forces. Master, what should we do? Pika asked in her sissy voice. Doflamingo was so angry that his teeth itched. He originally planned to get rid of Zwakong while he was still young, but who knew that Marine would make such a fuss and block the entire North Blue? Now the pirates of North Blue are only allowed to leave but not enter, especially Doflamingo's people, just to eliminate Doflamingo's forces in North Blue. The old man Marine will regret it. That brat has seen through everything. He will not be grateful to Marine at all, but will crush him without hesitation. Doflamingo sneered and mocked. These old guys. Toripole and Pika looked at each other and smiled. If we don't have a good life, you won't have a good life either. North Blue has been cleaned up. Crane dragged his chin and said in a low voice. Yeah. Sengoku nodded lightly. Garp leaned back in the chair and slept, and seemed to have no intention of participating in it. Young people nowadays are really terrible monsters. Kizaru looked at the information in front of him, and the corners of his mouth cracked, not knowing whether he was sighing or mocking. Advertisement. I suggest that I go and capture this brat myself. The man in the red suit stood up and said angrily. Admiral Akainu, along with Kizaru and Akiji, is one of the 3 Marine admirals. Unlike Kizaru and Akiji, Akainu is an out-and-out radical. In the 3 years since he became a Marine admiral, he has captured countless pirates. His physical skills, hockey, and fruit skills have all improved simultaneously. His strength is extremely terrifying, and he is called a monster by the pirates. Sengoku looked at Akainu and whispered, that kid is not qualified to let the highest combat power take action. What's more, Akainu, you should be responsible for the New World. If you leave the New World for a long time, do you know what those crazy people will do? Akainu sat down for Sengoku's subsequent scolding. Of course he knew. Marine only has the G5 branch left, which will be guarded by Akainu himself during the battle for the 4 emperors. If Akainu leaves, the New World pirates who are now rioting can dismantle the G5 branch in one day. Then send the Marine Vice Admiral. Crane listened to the conversation of several people in silence, and suddenly said after a long time, the Spider Demon will lead 5 Marine warships to fight. Sengoku finally decided on this matter, and said seriously, Pa. Suddenly, Garp's nose bubble burst, rubbing his eyes and sitting up, laughing. I think you should not underestimate that little devil. The 3 people on that little devil's ship are not ordinary people. Op Fruit, Snow Fruit, Childish Fruit. Kizaru said with a smile. It's really scary. Top Paramecia, rare Logia, Op fruit known as the ultimate devil fruit. Sengoku listened to the conversation between Garp and Kizaru and said lightly, "Where is that little devil now?" According to their journey, they will enter the upside-down mountain and rush into the Grand Line in 3 days. Crane said lightly. Advertisement, notify the spider demon to guard the upside-down mountain and definitely catch the little devil, regardless of the life or death of others. Sengoku gave the final order in a low voice and said firmly, "Master, do you think the Marine Vice Admiral or the Marine Admiral will be waiting for us at the upside-down mountain?" Monet looked at the pitiful look in Sandang's eyes and finally had to turn his head away and ask Zwakong, changing the subject. Zwakong put one hand on Sandang's back, watching her do push-ups, thought for a while and said, "At most, it's the Marine Vice Admiral. Akiji's whereabouts are unknown. Kazark guards the naval headquarters, and Akainu guards the New World. What's more, Sengoku may not take us seriously. What a pity. This is obviously the best opportunity to catch you, Master," Monet said with regret. "Are you going to be beaten again, little girl?" Zwakong rolled his eyes and said viciously, "I'm not wrong." Monet pouted and said cutely. Zwakong shook his head and ignored her, just continued to train Sucrose and asked, "How far is Monet from the upside-down mountain?" "It's right in front of us, my master," Monet said helplessly. Turning his head, what appeared in front of Zwakong was the waterfall flowing backwards. Seeing this majestic waterfall, Zwakong couldn't help but smile. Grand Line. I'm here. Reading is fun every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 035. Although I have heard of it before, I didn't expect that the upside-down mountain is actually a waterfall flowing backwards. Monet couldn't help but exclaimed in amazement as he went against the flow of the waterfall in the upside-down mountain. The power of nature, the beautiful waterfall flowing backwards. I believe everyone will feel amazed. For example, the little sugar now doesn't train, but actually directly controls the night doll core to drag himself up and float to watch the fun. Little girl who has never seen the world, I will take you to see Sky Island next time. Zwakong leaned on the recliner with a lazy look on his face and said with a smile. Monet shook his head and didn't argue with Zwakong. It's better to drive your own boat carefully. If an accident really happens, although nothing will happen, it will be very embarrassing. Although it is very spectacular, it's just like that after seeing it for a long time. Soon the group has safely passed the upside-down mountain and entered the Grand Line. Zwakong didn't go to see what the old doctor thought, so he set off directly. Sure enough, Marine has been prepared here for a long time. Monet looked at the Marine warship that had just calmed down and was heading here immediately, and said helplessly, "Are you here?" Zwakong stood up with murderous intent and said cruelly, "Master." Shatang suddenly pulled the corner of Zwakong's clothes and said. Zwakong turned around and looked at Shatang in confusion, wondering, "What's wrong with the little girl?" "Master, do you want me to turn them all into dolls?" Shatang's eyes were full of stars, and she said excitedly. Zwakong and Monet immediately felt a burst of collapsed thoughts coming into their minds. Shatang is a cute child. She doesn't cry or make a fuss. Although Zwakong's training is very hard, he will stick to it no matter what. But everyone has their own personality. Monet will blush when he is praised, and Shatang likes to collect dolls very much, especially likes to command these dolls to arrange troops and formations. Can you imagine the little Shatang who starts to toss before dawn in the morning? Advertisement. Why is she so energetic when she is obviously a little girl? Zwakong has said this to Monet more than once. Monet also expressed helplessness about this. Boom. Room. Suddenly, the cannonballs were fired. Zwakong hooked his palm, and the original cannonballs had already fallen into the sea. He patted Sugar's little head and smiled. The jokes are almost over here, and it's time to get down to business. Yeah, I think so too. Sugar nodded obediently. Zwakong jumped up and landed on the bow. Hearing Sugar's mumbling behind him, his originally ferocious killing intent turned into helplessness again. 10 members of the Knights seemed too few. What if there are 100 or 1,000? Well, we can try. Sugar muttered. The look in the eyes of those Marines was as if they had seen a treasure. Are you the devil? The Marine warship stopped in front of Zwakong's pirate ship, and one of the tall figures said lightly, "Marine Vice Admiral, Ghost Spider." Zwakong looked at the person who came and said interestingly, "It's me, Ghost Spider," who was holding a cigar and had 8 knives on his waist, said coldly. Zuokong pondered the information about Ghost Spider in his mind. He was a strong man among the Marine Vice-Admirals. He was a user of the Zoan Spider Fruit. He was good at the 8-sword style, armament haki, and observation haki. He practiced the Marine 6 styles at a very high level and was considered a very good strong man. What a pity. Zuokong suddenly shook his head and said, "What a pity." Ghost Spider asked lightly. Advertisements. Zuokong grinned and said arrogantly, "I thought it was the Marine Admiral who would see me off, but I didn't expect it to be just a Marine Vice Admiral. It seems that Sengoku still doesn't value me." Looking for death. Ghost Spider's face became even colder and said angrily, "Bang." Suddenly, Zuokong appeared in front of Ghost Spider and punched out. The long fist containing the terrifying armament haki immediately made Ghost Spider's eyes narrow. "Iron body." Ghost Spider shouted in a low voice with his hands around the moon. Bang. The powerful impact made the Marines, who were all considered to be the elite Marine warriors, fall to the ground, while Zuokong and Ghost Spider kept standing there. Zuokong suddenly smiled and said, "Iron body plus armament haki, you are really skilled. What a scary little devil." Ghost Spider also raised his head and exclaimed, "Finger pistol." Ghost Spider suddenly exerted force with both arms and immediately pointed his 2 fingers at Zuokong's heart. Room. Zuokong disappeared without a trace and smiled faintly. "The game has just begun. Be careful." Room slash. "Do you think Marine will not be prepared for Op Fruit?" Ghost Spider felt the unusual breath and sneered. Zuokong stood on the bow with interest, completely ignoring the Marine who was aiming at him, hooked his finger and said, "Come on, let me see Marine's preparation. Read books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement." 036. But what happened next made Zuokong frown slightly. The power of the Op Fruit definitely hit Ghost Spider, but Ghost Spider was unscathed. Even if he didn't use his full strength, it was impossible for him to be unscathed. This was the most shocking thing. "Little ghost, die." Ghost Spider roared. "Shave. Is it coming?" Ghost Spider suddenly appeared beside Zuokong, with 2 swords in his hands, and shouted, "Double sword style, slashing iron." Bang. What a strong armament haki. When the fist and the sword intersected, Ghost Spider's face immediately sank and said in a low voice. He didn't expect Zuokong to practice armament haki to this extent. Just as Zuokong said, Marine underestimated Zuokong. They thought Zuokong was just a little ghost who got the Op Fruit and was not taken seriously by them. Unfortunately, the facts told Ghost Spider that Zuokong was not something that could be easily taken down. Although I don't know why you can restrain the power of Op Fruit, you don't really think that is the real power of Op Fruit, right? Zuokong laughed cruelly. Room gravity space, 10,000 tons. Advertisement. Zuokong showed a crazy look, and his palm hooked, and the purple space immediately enveloped the entire Marine warship. The next moment, the terrifying power enveloped the entire warship, and Ghost Spider felt an extremely terrifying sense of oppression from all parts of his body. Is this gravity? How could the whole little ghost? Although Ghost Spider's body was stiff, he reacted very quickly and immediately stepped on the moon and took off into the air, saying in a low voice, "Boom." It's a pity that Ghost Spider left the entire warship. The hundreds of Marines on the warship were not so lucky. The shadow of death had already enveloped them, and they were crushed to pieces. The warship was crushed into ruins in an instant, and all the Marines were crushed into meat paste without even having the chance to be frightened. How could they bear the pressure of 10,000 tons? The blood dyed the sea red. "Little ghost, do you know what you are doing?" Ghost Spider roared. "What did you do?" Zuokong scratched his ears and asked sarcastically, "Do you Marines want to kill me? Do I have to passively accept it?" "Monet, sugar, do it." "Yes, master." With snow falling all over the sky and the nights flying, how could these ordinary Marines be the opponents of a Logia or a top Paramecia? Not to mention that they have gone through Zuokong's hellish training. "Where do you want to go?" Zuokong suddenly blocked the Ghost Spider in midair and asked with a kick, "Little ghost, don't block the way." Ghost Spider growled. The killing continued. This was a one-sided massacre. Marines had no power to fight back. Screams and wails resounded throughout the battlefield. Advertisement, "Then kill you first." Ghost Spider looked at Zuokong and said coldly, "8-sword style, spiderweb." Ghost Spider roared, and 6 arms extended from behind him. Each of the 8 arms held a long sword, entangled with armament haki, and whistled. The intertwined sword energy was densely packed like a terrifying spider web entangled with Zwakong's body. Room air explosion. Zwakong hooked his palm, and suddenly a terrifying explosion immediately resounded through the air. Ghost Spider, who came by surprise, was not greeted by the victory he thought of, but a violent explosion coming head-on. Boom! Ghost Spider's blood burst, and he fell from the sky, about to fall into the sea. Moonwalk. Roaring and squeezing the strength of his body, Ghost Spider barely stood up and landed on a wooden board. Is this really the ability of Op Fruit? Ghost Spider looked at Zwakong and thought in horror. Op Fruit has appeared in history, otherwise no one would know the ability of Op Fruit, but this gravity and explosion are not the abilities of Op Fruit at all? What's more important is that Zwakong didn't hear any sound when he attacked just now, as if he didn't speak. How tragic. But your marine's technology is really terrible. Zwakong landed on the bow of the pirate ship and exclaimed with a smile. He looked at Ghost Spider solemnly in his heart. He blocked his Op Fruit again. This situation was very strange. Just now, he was mixed with the power of Op Fruit in the explosion. At that moment, Ghost Spider definitely didn't use haki, but he did block his attack. Humph. Vegapunk's technology is not something a kid like you can imagine. Ghost Spider sneered. Is it really him? Zwakong murmured in his heart. In fact, it can be guessed long ago. Can anyone else develop the ability to resist Op Fruit, except Vegapunk, the genius? Don't underestimate me. Op Fruit is only part of my strength, Zwakong said with a smile. Once again, he attacked fiercely. Op Fruit, Ton Pressure Fruit, Explosion Fruit, Silence Fruit, all 4 fruits were fully developed by Zwakong. Armament Haki and Observation Haki Double Color Haki were even developed to overwhelm everyone. 1 + 1 can sometimes be greater than 10. Have fun reading every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 037. 10,000 tons. Zwakong's speed was extremely fast. Even Ghost Spider could not sense his speed with observation haki. After all, there was still a certain gap between speed and teleportation. A punch suddenly came across the sky, and the huge force squeezed the air. The terrifying armed color covered the entire fist. Ghost Spider did not consider how terrible this punch was. Don't underestimate me, kid, Ghost Spider roared. 8 swords flow, sea break. 8 long swords turned into a terrifying black light, and the sword shadows in the air actually gathered into one. A sword fell and opened and was cut. What a terrifying sword technique. Zwakong punched up and laughed. Stop lying. Ghost Spider's cigar had long been lost, and he said stiffly with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Boom! The violent impact turned the debris of the warship into powder. The sea was even more turbulent under the battle between the two people, and the air seemed to become thinner. It's a pity that it's still not enough. Zwakong laughed. There was pressure, but the next moment, a more terrifying force swept over. Ghost Spider was completely knocked out and turned into a stream of light in the air. Zwakong hooked his palm, and the purple space immediately expanded. The following battle made everyone feel terrified. It was a completely crushing battle. Ghost Spider seemed to be tattered like a ravaged puppet under Zwakong's attack. 100 tons. Zwakong's long legs swept across the Ghost Spider's head and swept it directly away. The violent attack had no rules at all, but this was the most suitable attack for Zwakong. Sure enough, only 100 tons can be continuously borne. Zwakong clenched his fists, feeling the fatigue coming from his body, and thought secretly in his heart. Advertisement Zwakong can now withstand the impact of 100 tons, but if he wants to withstand the impact of thousands of tons and tens of thousands of tons in continuous battles, he still needs to work hard to cultivate his own system. In addition to the development of Devil Fruit, the strength of Devil Fruit is more dependent on the system. The same fruit exerts completely different power in the hands of people with different physiques. Ahem. Ghost Spider was smashed directly into a warship, his mouth twitching, his whole body shaking violently, and he coughed heavily, blood mixed with internal organs flowing out. As expected of Zoan, this system is really amazing. Zwakong teleported to the marine warship and said in admiration, "Wind blowing snow." The violent snowflakes enveloped the warship again. Except for Ghost Spider, all marines were pierced through in an instant. They didn't even have a chance to react. In a short time, the 5 warships brought by Ghost Spider were reduced to the last one. The battle is almost over here. I want to know what Vegapunk has researched, and I'm also interested in marine six styles, Zwakong said with a smile.
Master,
Monet suddenly said, "What's wrong?" "There is a ship in the distance heading here, very fast, and it will arrive here soon." Monet observed the distance in midair and reported. "Marine support? No. If it is marine support, there shouldn't be only one ship." Zwakong thought strangely. "Get out of the way. Get out of the way, you bunch of Marines." A violent voice came from the bottom of the Marine warship, and a voice shouted angrily, "Search, search, search." A series of voices came out immediately, and more than a dozen fishmen rushed out of the sea, led by a fishman who looked very violent and tall with a big knife. "Advertisement, American tribe?" Monet landed on Zwakong's side and whispered softly, "It's really interesting. It seems that this battle seems to be involved in something very interesting," Zwakong said with interest, carefully looking at the people around, but more of them fell on the tallest fishman, because he had a resounding name called Evil Dragon. Humble. Evil Dragon looked at Zwakong and roared immediately. Bang! The Evil Dragon turned into a stream and was sent into the sea with a slap. Zwakong said coldly, "Shut your mouth, you bastards, you lowly human." All the fishmen were angry and roared, "Looking for death." Zwakong's face immediately turned cold, and he said with murderous intent. A terrifying breath immediately came out of his body, and all the fishmen fell to the ground almost at the same time, twitching all over, with white eyes. This is... Ghost Spider dragged his seriously injured body to stand up and said with difficulty, "You be asterisk 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 D fishmen. Go to hell." Zwakong's face slowly raised a fist, and the terrifying power was brewing on it, saying coldly, "Gun wave." The sudden sense of danger made Zwakong suddenly turn around, punch out, and whispered, 10,000 tons? Boom. Accompanied by the bursting water, a ship finally came into Zwakong's eyes, and the leader was a red fishman. Enjoy reading every day during the National Day holiday. Top up 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Top up now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 038. American Explorer. Fisher Tiger. Zwakong looked at the red American standing at the bow and making the attack just now, and said calmly, "Why did you attack us?" Tiger said in a low voice, "He is not a friendly person." Although he and Princess Otoheim also hope that Americans and humans can live in peace, unlike Princess Otoheim, Tiger believes that fists are power. He wants Americans to have power over humans. To put it bluntly, he is a violent person. The evil dragon is his little brother. He was beaten out in front of him, and the other Americans were all missing. It would be strange if he could hold back. Although it was the American who provoked first, in fact, isn't the world about the big fist? Zwakong had no intention of defending himself, but just sneered. Who is right or wrong has nothing to do with me. Since you attacked my brother, don't blame me. Tiger raised his hands, put on a karate posture, and said calmly, "American karate?" Zwakong laughed. "Very good. I want to see it too. Search." Suddenly, a sharp arrow shot up from the sea, and the evil dragon that was slapped away by Zwakong rushed out again, landing on the warship and breathing heavily. "Ha, ha, ha. A asterisk asterisk hole. Brother Tiger is not comparable to you. A waste." The evil dragon cursed fiercely. "So you want to attack me?" Zwakong glanced at the evil dragon with disdain and sneered. "Ah!" A wild roar came from the evil dragon's mouth, roaring, "You lowly human, be obedient." Advertisement, I said. "You should shut up." Zwakong grabbed the evil dragon's head with one hand and said coldly, "Crack." A crisp sound rang out, and the evil dragon's legs were broken. The pain of the broken bones made the evil dragon kneel stiffly on the ground, wanting to move but unable to move at all. This brat. Ghost Spider did not attack, but returned to the only remaining warship. Seeing Zwakong, he muttered in his heart. Of course, Ghost Spider did not want to leave, because there was no need to leave at all. That person was coming. Zwakong and Tiger did not care about Ghost Spider's actions. Although both of them were not as good as Admiral, they were definitely not at the same level as Vice Admiral. Unless they were Vice Admirals at the Quasi-Admiral level, they would be crushed by the two. "Kneel down." Zwakong looked down and said coldly like an emperor. The dragon's head was stepped on hard by Zwakong's foot, and even if he used all his strength, he could not move at all. Tiger's face was stiff, but he did not dare to act rashly. He regarded all the fishmen as brothers, and said with an extremely ugly face, "What do you want to let Arlong go? Hand over the training method of Fishman Karate first. Remember, I can tell whether it is true or false," Zwakong said lightly, as if he was kindly reminding him. This function was recently developed by Zwakong. As long as you hold the item in your hand, although you can't tell the grade, the system can give a correct comment on whether it is genuine. "Brother," the fishmen immediately shouted one after another. Fishman Karate is not a valuable thing, but relatively speaking, the Fishman Karate in Tiger's hand and Jinbei's hand are Fishman Karate with many hidden powers and extremely advanced moves, which ordinary fishmen can never learn. "Shut up." At this time, a fat fishman came out and shouted, "Advertisement, brother. Marine is about to catch up." Jinbei whispered. Tiger's face was extremely ugly, but after a long time, he still said stiffly, "Can I let Arlong go if I give you the Fishman Karate? You are not qualified to bargain with me." Zwakong sneered. "Release the evil dragon? How is it possible? Even if it is just an ant-like existence in his eyes, it is still comfortable to kill such an arrogant ant." Tiger finally gave up and threw a small book over. Monet immediately swung it, and the snowflakes wrapped the small book and fell into Zwakong's hands. "It's really the real thing." Zwakong flipped through it and said with a smile, "Can I do it now?" Before Tiger finished speaking, Zwakong stepped on the dragon's head with one foot, and at the same time, Monet immediately jumped up, with the wind and snow flying, and whispered, "Wind and snow." All the unconscious fishmen lost their lives in their sleep and did not experience pain. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. UB asterisk 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 D. In Zwakong's mocking smile, Tiger finally jumped up angrily and roared, "Fishman's empty-handed, secret, Wu Lai Guan. Room Jean." Zwakong also smiled cruelly and said coldly, "Read books every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, activity time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement." 039. The water ball condensed in Tiger's palm exploded with a bang, so fast and fierce that it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was lightning. It was a blow that was enough to penetrate the mountains. Bang! Just as it approached Zwakong, there was a sudden violent explosion, and the water ball was stopped in midair by the terrible impact. This feeling, Tiger didn't think about it, and immediately jumped into the sea in midair, even deep into the sea, and whispered in a low voice, "What a keen feeling." Zwakong curled his lips and dispersed the space, sighing. Feeling that the piercing feeling disappeared, Tiger rushed out from the bottom of the sea, rushed out of the sea and landed on his boat, and said solemnly, "You are the Op Fruit ability user called Devil, right? It's not easy to know the effect of Op Fruit." Zwakong looked at Tiger with interest and said with a little surprise, Op Fruit is an extremely precious devil fruit. Although it is famous throughout the sea, almost no one knows its true effect. I was a slave for 3 years, and I saw the devil fruit illustration by chance," Tiger said very calmly. He didn't feel the slightest bit of reluctance or anger because he was once a slave. It was enough for him to be free now. Why should he think so much about the past? What a generous person. But it's a pity that you and I are not friends, Zwakong seemed to say with regret. "You don't deserve to be my friend. A human who goes back on his word." Tiger's voice was full of natural arrogance, and he roared angrily as he swept across the body of the evil dragon. "Ha ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha!" Zwakong laughed wildly, holding his forehead with one hand, and his scarlet eyes were revealed in his remaining eyes. At this moment, Tiger, Jinbei, Ghost Spider, and all the mermaids and marines present felt the biting cold, as if it came from the coldness of the soul. "Go back on your word? When did I promise you that I have the biggest fist in this world? I only need enough power to destroy the world government. I took away the mermaids of the Fishman Island in front of you. What qualifications do you have to resist?" Zwakong said in a cold voice. "Advertisement, what a dangerous boy." Before Tiger could speak, a lazy voice suddenly came into everyone's ears. Looking in the direction of the voice, a tall figure appeared on the Ghost Spider's warship. Zwakong smiled interestingly. "Support? I'm afraid I'm just a little kid in the eyes of Marine. It's impossible to send you to track me. Is it for Tiger?" In a few words, Zwakong's analysis was almost complete. For a while, he looked at Tiger teasingly. Things seemed to be getting more and more interesting. "Akiji," Tiger said in a low and solemn voice. "On this sea, except for the 4 emperors who have been established, no one can ignore the existence of the Admiral, the highest combat power of Marine, and Tiger and others are being chased by Akiji, and they are being chased without any ability to fight back. Tiger, the world government ordered me to arrest you. It's really troublesome, Akiji said lazily. Since it's troublesome, why don't you let them go? Zoan half squatted on the penetration of the warship below him and asked with interest. Akiji seemed to scratch his head in distress and sighed helplessly. There is no way. This is the order of those celestial dragons. If you let Tiger go like this, the marshal will also be scolded, Akiji said helplessly. Zoan immediately understood what was going on. Tiger was once the effort of celestial dragons. Before Tiger climbed up to the Holy Land and released the slaves, celestial dragons were the pinnacle of power, and Tiger actually escaped. This is simply a slap in the face. Naturally, celestial dragons will pursue it. In desperation, Marine just sent Akiji to hunt down Tiger. Advertisement and... Turning his head, Akiji glanced at Zoan, who seemed to be smiling but not smiling. His face seemed to be much heavier. He whispered, "Compared to Tiger's, Zoan, you are more threatening. Should I be honored or should I feel sad?" Zoan raised his palm lightly, and the figure suddenly disappeared, leaving only the voice echoing in the air. Search. Legs collided with each other. Zoan and Akiji also put their hands in their pockets and stared at each other. Their legs collided between them. The only difference was that one was lazy and the other was crazy. It's really crazy. Do you know what you are facing? Akiji's voice was very low, but he still said lazily, "Crack, crack." As if to confirm Akiji's words, Zoan's right leg that collided with Akiji began to be frozen by ice little by little. "Master!" Monet flew into the air and shouted anxiously. "Stay here obediently," Zoan scolded without turning his head. Monet said nothing and fell down obediently, but tears flowed from his eyes. He clenched his hands tightly and stared at the position of Zoan and Akiji, his heart full of resentment for his weakness. "The gentle one. The cold one. Which one is you?" Akiji asked softly. "Guess?" Zoan laughed crazily. "Reading is fun every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 040. Master." Monet bit her thin lips tightly, holding back the tears in her eyes. She hugged the sugar beside her tightly in her arms and whispered. She was a smart woman. Of course, she knew why Suchu didn't let her take action. It was innate restraint. Frozen fruit was the superior fruit of snow fruit. Even if Monet was also an admiral, she was not Akiji's opponent, not to mention that Monet was only close to the strength of vice admiral. "It's all because I'm too weak," Monet thought unwillingly in her heart. For the first time, she had an extremely strong pursuit of becoming stronger. "If you go on like this, your leg will be crippled," Akiji kindly reminded. Don't worry. Op fruit is not such a simple fruit," Zoan also said with a smile. The actions of the two people made it impossible to tell that they were enemies of pirates and marines. Instead, they looked like old friends reminiscing about the past. But the situation changed the next moment. Bang, bang, bang. The four fists of the two people made a series of terrifying collisions. The hockey of armament hockey was entangled on it, and the observation hockey sensed each other. The four fists intertwined as fast as lightning, making it impossible to imagine what kind of battle this was. 100 tons. Zoan silently chanted in his heart. Boom. The collision of two fists and the collision of armament hockey and armament hockey, Zoan couldn't help but smile. This is worthy of being an admiral. The use of armament hockey is really proficient. If you don't have this ability, you are not qualified to be armament hockey. Akiji's laziness slowly dissipated in his eyes, and he said calmly, "Advertisement," as he lowered his head. Akiji reminded again. "Your right leg has been completely frozen and has been disabled." "Disabled?" Zoan tilted his head and said in great distress. Crack. A shocking scene appeared. Zoan actually broke his right leg abruptly, and his figure disappeared in an instant. Akiji did not chase, but looked at Zoan, who appeared with one leg not far away. His eyes were calm, and I don't know what he was thinking. Room life assembly. Raising his palm, the visible purple covered the leg bone, and at a terrifying speed visible to the naked eye, Zoan's leg grew out again. Yes, it grew out, not reattached. How? Zoan moved slightly, unscathed, and smiled interestingly. Terrible ability, Akiji exclaimed. Ahem. Suddenly, a violent cough sounded, and Ghost Spider staggered over and said firmly, "Akiji Admiral, please let me deal with this little ghost. You are not his opponent." Akiji did not have the flavor of sarcasm, nor did he look down on the flavor, but just told the truth. "I know. Justice will never succumb to evil." Ghost Spider shouted loudly. Roar. With a roar, the body of the Ghost Spider began to become strange, and the whole person began to swell violently. A bloody red light burst out of his eyes. Obviously, he was losing his mind. Soon, a huge black 8-clawed spider with a height of 6 meters appeared in front of Zwakong, and there was a very strange armor on his body. Looking closely, it was sea stone. "So that's it. It's made of sea stone," Zwakong said clearly. Although his devil fruit is not afraid of sea stone and seawater, it is based on its own system. It does not mean that sea stone and seawater have no ability to restrain devil fruit. The simple defense effect is still very good. If it is a normal type of attack, it's okay, but this type of special attack is the most restrained by sea stone. "Akiji, will you help me if I want to kill the ghost spider?" Zwakong asked. That look is as simple as asking what to eat in the evening. This is his choice. His justice does not allow anyone to taint it. Akiji took a step back, leaving the battlefield, and said firmly, "Everyone has his own justice, and that justice cannot be tarnished. That is Marine's justice." "Advertisement, really?" Zwakong laughed cruelly and said cruelly, "Ghost Spider, let me see what kind of power this clothing that Vegapunk has researched." Roar. With a roar, the big spider has already pounced on him. Room gravity space, 10,000 tons. Bang. Unexpectedly, Ghost Spider held on to Zwakong's attack and rushed up at a brisk pace. Sure enough, Zoan's system is so terrible. Zwakong chuckled and exclaimed, "Die." The faint voice made people feel terrified. The red light in Zwakong's eyes has become more and more vigorous, and the hook of his fingers is getting faster and faster, and the soft voice slowly spit out, "Room death cut." Puff. A series of sounds came from the ghost spider's body, and the huge spider stopped. The clothes made of sea stone were cut open, followed by the whole body. With a flick of the finger, the ghost spider was separated into hundreds of pieces and fell into the sea. "Next is your turn." Zwakong turned around and looked at Akiji, who had not moved from beginning to end, and said calmly, "Read books every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 041. System. Zwakong leaped up, and the warship collapsed in an instant, and he said softly in his heart, "Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for killing Marine Vice Admiral Ghost Spider and obtaining 0.8 replication points, looting the devil fruit, spider fruit." Zwakong frowned slightly as the system sounded, but suddenly found that there was no abnormal movement this time, but the body instinctively had a special energy. The body instantly became surging, and the skin hidden under the clothes surged with a layer of hair, which was the hair of the spider. Zwakong snorted coldly. The power in the body began to become more violent, but the impulse was immediately suppressed. Zwakong had eaten 4 devil fruits and would not be out of control for a short time. Crack, crack. The sea was suddenly frozen, and all the Marines were saved. The adjutant said nervously, "Akiji Admiral, why?" "That was the choice of Ghost Spider himself. His justice will never be tarnished by us." Akiji saluted very seriously, bowed majestically, and said firmly, "Salute." The adjutant was silent, and said firmly after a moment, "For justice." The shouts of the Marine shook the earth. "Master, another Marine has arrived." Monet suddenly flapped his wings and flew to Zwakong's side. The snowflakes dispersed, and he recovered his original body, and immediately said solemnly, although this was Ghost Spider's own choice, but watching his comrades die in front of him is also a kind of sadness. 2 tall figures jumped down. They were the 2 vice admirals, Mole and Doberman. Zwakong glanced at Akiji, then at the 2 vice admirals, and couldn't help but laugh. "It seems that you also attach great importance to Tiger. You actually sent an admiral and 2 vice admirals. There is no way. After all, it is the order of celestial dragons. But now the more important thing is to catch you, a little devil." Akiji still said lazily, "Advertisement, ice saber." The cold air exhaled from his mouth immediately turned into a ray of light in the air, and a long sword mixed with armament haki had fallen from the air. Bang! Zwakong suddenly felt the terrifying pressure. and the whole person couldn't help but roar for a while. But the next moment, he roared in his heart, 10,000 tons. Boom. The ice surface was broken layer by layer, but Zhuokong was able to withstand Akiji's attack and said in a low voice, "It's really a monster's attack. It's worthy of being a marine admiral, the highest combat power of the headquarters." Hey, you are more like a monster, right? The mole showed a solemn look in his eyes and couldn't help saying. At such a young age, he can withstand the attack of Admiral Akiji. No wonder Admiral Akiji takes him so seriously. Doberman was no longer as calm as before, but also became serious. The two vice admirals looked at each other. Such an enemy must be eliminated. Room gravity scalpel. The purple light flashed by, and Akiji instantly felt a gravity pressing on him. His body seemed to become dull. More importantly, a more terrible force rushed straight to his heart. Puff. Unfortunately, it was only frost that floated up. Akiji said with an unchanged expression, "It's a very good attack, but it's a pity that Haki can't be gathered into this special attack, so it's ineffective for Logia." Zhuokong didn't say anything. Of course, he knew the problem. The ability to suppress Monet was entirely based on his own Haki and physical fitness, not the ability of Op Fruit. The current Op Fruit could not cause any damage to Logia. Of course, if Zhuokong can see the Op Fruit continue to develop, then it won't be long before Logia is hurt. Ice Ball. Akiji pointed his palm at Zhuokong, and 5 ice pillars burst out immediately, landing on Zhuokong's body very quickly, and Zhuokong's body was instantly sealed by frost. Advertisement, solved? Master. Both sides were a little nervous. So quiet. Akiji suddenly felt something was wrong. He couldn't hear other people's voices, and immediately thought solemnly in his heart. Room air explosion. Zhuokong's voice exploded in Akiji's ears, and Zhuokong appeared intact not far away, while Akiji was enveloped by the explosion. Boom. The violent explosion directly opened a deep pit on the ice layer, surrounded by smoke. But then Akiji's figure emerged in it, jumped up and raised his hands, and the frost gathered again. Ice 2 thorn spears. The ice quickly condensed into ice spears and whistled out. Zhuokong hooked his palm and whispered, "Room gravity space." Bang. The terrifying gravity instantly crushed the ice. Zhuokong laughed. "Long-range attacks are ineffective against me? Akiji Admiral, did the devil team up with Tiger?" Looking at Tiger and his group who did not retreat, Mole immediately asked in a low voice, "Team up? With these trash?" Zhuokong pointed at Tiger and others and laughed mockingly. "That kid won't team up with anyone. He is a lunatic, except..." Akiji glanced at Monet and Sugar and said lightly. Zhuokong laughed. "I don't have the idea of teaming up with others. Either surrender or die." Room explosion, gravity scalpel. Read books every day on the 11th. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, activity time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 042. Boom. The heart was pierced without knowing it, but it was not over yet. The terrifying gravity began to twist, the air began to expand, and it exploded with a bang. "Akiji Admiral," Doberman shouted nervously. Could it be? Tiger also widened his eyes and said in astonishment, "Hualala." The frost in the sky suddenly fell, and the figures slowly assembled. Akiji stood up unscathed, seemed to move his neck very lazily, and then walked towards Zhuokong with slow steps. "Sure enough, such a trick can't defeat Admiral." Zhuokong spread his hands and said helplessly, "Have you developed gravity, explosion, Op Fruit to this extent?" Standing in front of Zhuokong, Akiji said lightly, "Sigh." Zhuokong smiled mysteriously. "Who knows? Maybe it will be stronger." Frozen time capsule. After a short silence, Akiji suddenly took the lead. The cold air bullet was extremely fast. It whizzed in front of Zhuokong in an instant and covered Zhuokong's body in an instant. The terrifying frost instantly froze Zhuokong completely, and a lifelike ice sculpture emerged. Kacha! Before the marine soldiers could cheer, the ice sculpture suddenly exploded. Zhuokong walked out of it, put his hands in his pockets and walked towards Akiji step by step, smiling. "This won't work. Really, isn't it better to be captured obediently?" Akiji lazily held his forehead and said helplessly, "I'm a pirate. How can I be caught so easily by marine?" Zhuokong said lightly. Bang! His legs collided again, and Zhuokong's face froze. The terrifying power came towards him. The huge power directly suppressed himself and was thrown out like a cannonball. Boom! The huge force directly blasted a deep pit in the ice layer. The smoke had not yet dissipated. The figure in it jumped up. Zwakong jumped up again and rushed up from top to bottom, punching out with a whisper. 100,000 tons. Ice cube, ice fist. Boom. The huge ice that spread rapidly turned into a huge ice fist, and it collided violently with Zwakong. The air became scorched at this moment. Zwakong looked ugly, and the next moment he roared madly. 500,000 tons. Boom. An even greater force burst out from Zwakong's arm. The terrifying force crushed Akiji's ice fist abruptly, coming from top to bottom. The dark armed color exuded a deep color like a black hole version. Die. Zwakong roared. A punch hit Akiji hard, breaking the ice layer by layer, and the strong fist wind directly crushed the ground layer by layer. The terrible power forced the two vice admirals to retreat. What a terrifying power, but it's a pity that the hockey of armament color is still a little short. Akiji walked out of the frost, and the army cloak behind him had been shattered at some point. He said lightly in a decent suit. Advertisement. Is this the power of Admiral? Kneeling on one knee on the ground, Zwakong said with a slightly heavy breath. Not an opponent. Zwakong can be said to have gathered all his devil fruit into ultimate, but he still can't cause effective damage to Akiji. Maybe in the eyes of outsiders, being able to break Akiji's cloak is already a very good record, but for him, it is not enough. Far from enough. Your arm is useless. Akiji glanced at Zwakong's arm and said, tick, tick, tick. Drops of blood dripped onto the ground. Zwakong had a blank expression on his face, as if he didn't care about the injury on his arm. He was forcibly bearing the pressure of 500,000 tons. Even his body couldn't bear it. The ton pressure fruit may not be as good as the shock fruit, but the similarity between the two is that while causing great damage, the impact on oneself is also extremely large. Just like Zwakong at this moment, his arm is almost disabled. Room life assembly. With a flick of his finger, Zwakong's arm was enveloped by purple light and instantly became intact. Akiji, Admiral. The mole stepped forward and whispered, what do you need us to do? Just go and catch Tiger and the two companions of this kid. Akiji waved his hand and said very calmly, yes, sir. The mole nodded. Advertisement Doberman and the mole looked at each other, and the two of them rushed towards Tiger and Monet. Rat knife slash. The mole narrowed his eyes slightly and suddenly swung his knife, and the rats in the sky whistled out and suddenly gathered in the air to form a huge knife energy, rushing straight towards Monet. Little ghost, I can't let you mess up. Akiji raised his hand and said lightly, ice frozen moment. Room slash. The ice wall was broken before it rose, and Zwakong appeared in front of Monet in an instant, with one hand on the terrible knife energy. Crack. Zwakong crushed the knife energy with a palm and said ferociously, dead rat, who allowed you to attack my people? Read books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 043. 10,000 tons. Zwakong flew up, bringing with him a sharp cold wind, and the violent aura was completely concentrated on this attack. The ferocious face told others what the angry demon would do. Asterisk hole. Mole's face darkened and he cursed. The power was completely gathered on these two arms, and the horizontal sword immediately blocked in front of Zwakong. But it was a pity that he was waiting for his uncontrolled and extremely terrifying power. Ahem. The terrifying power was added to the body, and the mole was immediately pulled out, shaking violently, as if his heart had exploded. He raised his head stiffly in midair, and the one waiting for the mole was Zwakong, who had already rushed over and looked down. Ice ball! Akiji shouted angrily, and the 5 ice pillars were faster than Zwakong's speed. Ghost Spider chose his own justice, and he died. But the mole could not die. The death of 2 vice admirals in one day was definitely not something Marine could bear. Die. Zwakong completely ignored Akiji's attack and said fiercely, room death cut. Swish. Crack. The mole moved his body at the critical moment of the crisis. The attack that should have cut him horizontally only cut off his arms. His arms fell to the ground. The mole rushed out again, and at this moment Akiji's attack was already approaching, completely covering Zwakong's body. Room air explosion. The air exploded with a bang. Whether it was Hanbing, Mole, or Zwakong, they were all covered in the range of the explosion. The impact rose to the sky like a terrifying mushroom cloud, and Monet, who had been prepared, had already left this place with sugar. Sister. The master will not. Sugar said nervously. Advertisement, don't worry. This is the master's order. Monet patted Sugar's little head and gently persuaded. But her heart was full of tension. She didn't know what her master would do and what the result would be. Is this guy crazy? Akiji rushed out of the smoke with a mole in one hand, saying helplessly. The mole was covered in blood, and his arms were completely broken. He could no longer stand. He could only kneel on the ground with difficulty and said weakly, Akiji Admiral, this kid, room gravity scalpel. Before the mole finished speaking, Zwakong's cold voice came again, and the terrifying scalpel whistled at the same time. Akiji's face sank. Ordinary attacks were useless for the ability of Audiobook Fruit. After looking at the completely disabled mole beside him, he clasped his hands together and shouted, Ice sculpture! Puff! The mole and Akiji were slowly covered by frost at the same time. The scalpel pierced through the two of them, and the terrifying pressure directly crushed the frost. But the next moment Akiji appeared again with the mole in his hand. SK. Zwakong curled his lips in disdain. He came out of the smoke with a gloomy face and tattered clothes, but there was no obvious injury, or it could be said that he had already been restored by the Audiobook Fruit. Using ice to replace his position and escaping at the last moment, he is worthy of being an admiral. Zwakong looked at the two and said in admiration, What a terrible little devil! Tiger exclaimed. Boom! The earth was shattered and Doberman smiled and said, It's better not to be distracted, otherwise you will die. Marine Vice Admiral is really terrible. Tiger took a fighting posture of fishman karate and exclaimed, Surrender. Akiji suddenly said, You have no chance. From the moment you refused to join forces with Tiger, you were doomed to fail. That move can restore your injuries, but how many times can you use it? Advertisement. The Admiral's eyes were so vicious. How could such a move be used infinitely, not to mention that devil fruit consumes physical strength? Surrender? Zwakong said in an exaggerated way. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Bursts of crazy laughter came out of Zwakong's mouth, as if he heard something worth laughing at. Freezing moment. Akiji suddenly appeared in front of Zwakong, wrapped his arms around him, and quickly released cold air, freezing Zwakong's body. Room. Swish. Zwakong disappeared and appeared not far away. His low voice was like the roar of a beast, and he said madly, Akiji, I am a devil, I am a devil. What a lunatic in that case, kill him on the spot. Akiji held his forehead slightly and said helplessly, but when his palm was put down, he left a cold face. Kill me? Come on, come on, let me see. Zwakong laughed and soared into the sky, laughing in a completely crazy state. Room air explosion. Opening his hands, an extremely terrifying purple space emerged from Zwakong's hands. The terrifying space almost enveloped everyone, but the next moment it suddenly shrank and exploded in Zwakong's laughter. Boom. The terrifying impact made everyone cover their eyes. They didn't know what happened on the battlefield. Reading is fun every day. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 044. No. Search. The figure of Zwakong suddenly appeared in front of Akiji, with a cruel smile in his eyes, and he punched Akiji's mouth and suddenly blasted out. Bang! 500,000 tons. The air seemed to be shaking under this punch, and the terrifying impact hit Akiji head-on. Everyone saw a figure flying backwards in the smoke. Is that Admiral Akiji? The mole, who had returned to the warship with the help of the marine, looked at the flying figure in horror and said in astonishment, How is this possible? Doberman said in the same astonishment. Opportunity. Monet suddenly jumped up into the sky, and the wind and snow were whistling all over the sky. Wind and snow. Damn woman. The wound stimulated Doberman. As Vice Admiral, he naturally defended against Monet's attack immediately, but he couldn't help cursing secretly. Ha ha ha. Zwakong gasped heavily, blood dripping from his arm. Without thinking, he turned around and rushed towards the marine warship. As for whether Akiji was dead or not, that was impossible. Even though seawater was the nemesis of devil fruit, as an admiral, he was well prepared for how to guard against nature. Akiji was just attacked by himself suddenly because of the silence fruit. Die. Zwakong smiled grimly at the mole. Zwakong knew that he couldn't kill Akiji. Since he couldn't kill Akiji, he would leave all the marines behind, and let the marines know the consequences of daring to chase him. Room air bomb. Zwakong dragged his hands in the air, and a larger purple space emerged. Compared with the three-pointer he had to play against Akiji just now, Zhuokong was already prepared, and there was absolutely no need for any residual space for the sure kill. Advertisement, little devil, stop it. The mole widened his eyes, soared into the sky, and roared. Tempest kick. Even though he was suddenly seriously injured, Vice Admiral is Vice Admiral. Even if he lost both hands, Mole did not completely lose his ability to fight. He soared into the sky, waving his legs, and the terrifying air wave whistled out, gathering into an air blade that was strong enough to cut gold and jade. Mole is also a strong one among Vice Admirals. The impact of Tempest Kick has surpassed Ghost Spider. If it were not for the sudden sneak attack, coupled with the slight contempt for Zhuokong, it would not be so easy to be solved. Scum. Zhuokong sneered. Crush it. The dark hockey enveloped his palm, and Zhuokong crushed the violent air blade in the most direct and brutal way. Hole. Mole roared and roared, rushing towards Zhuokong frantically. Die. Zhuokong laughed cruelly. The palm moved slightly. Boom. The terrifying mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and huge waves were washed up. For a moment, everyone narrowed their eyes. When the high waves fell completely, it caused a more terrifying giant wolf. Not good. Monet rushed out with Sugar in his arms and landed carefully on the boat, avoiding the waves. Master, Sugar called nervously. The restraint of seawater on demon fruit power is well known to the world. Pa. When everything was calm, stepping on the broken wooden board, everything had become the past. The marine warship disappeared. The Vice Admiral Mole disappeared. All the Marines disappeared. As for where they went, damn kid, go to hell. Doberman rushed over and roared. Doberman. Zhuokong's face became slightly solemn, and he whispered in a low voice. Advertisement, even in the face of Tiger's head-on attack and Monet's occasional sneak attacks, Doberman still easily resolved them. He was already one of the best masters in Marine Vice Admiral, and his strength was terrifying. Zhuokong could easily deal with the mole and the ghost spider, but he did not dare to underestimate Doberman. This man was not a simple man. There are two left. Zhuokong suddenly turned his eyes to the only two remaining warships and smiled interestingly. Little devil, die, Doberman roared. He rose up and fell with the force of splitting Huashan. Boom. The sea was split by a knife mark, and Zhuokong's figure had long disappeared. In the noisy voice, Zhuokong's voice came out faintly. Room, you will die with the two warships under you. Zhuokong looked at Doberman's figure, which turned continuously and appeared on another warship, and smiled gently. Little devil. Doberman raised his long sword horizontally and roared. Cut. Search. The huge sword energy rushed straight towards Zhuokong, and Zhuokong hooked his palm and said coldly, Room explosion gravity scalpel. Facing Admiral, Zhuokong used the trick again. Even though the power was not as strong as before, the enemy he faced was no match for Admiral. Damn it. Doberman felt the terrible power and cursed solemnly. Room air explosion. Zhuokong's hands shone with a terrifying impact and enveloped a warship again. Boom. Reading books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 045. Room heart cut. After dodging Zhuokong's attack with difficulty, Doberman was in tatters and had no time to dodge. Suddenly, his heart beat violently. Plop, plop, plop. Bang. The heart was suddenly taken away. How does it feel? Zhuokong pinched Doberman's heart with one hand and asked strangely. You be asterisk 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 D. Doberman cursed. Tempest kick skydance. Doberman roared and suddenly soared into the sky, his legs dancing continuously. At this moment, the sky was full of endless air blades, and the terrifying air blades were even stained with a hint of black light, as if they were going to cut Zhuokong apart. What a terrible attack! Zhuokong smiled evilly and exclaimed. But, plop, crack! All the attacks collapsed in an instant. Doberman fell from the sky, holding his heart. He lay on the deck with difficulty, struggled to stand up, and said hurriedly, enduring the pain. So that's it. This is your ability. You took my heart, but still... Ahem. Doberman didn't finish his words, but as Zhuokong hooked his palm, Doberman suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Vice Admiral, are you okay? Advertisement on the only remaining warship. All the Marines hurriedly surrounded him and carefully helped Doberman up. This was a ray of ice that suddenly broke through the air. Zoan didn't even need to look back to know what happened. Ice cube, ice fist. Turning around very slowly, Zoan chuckled and said, Akiji, do you really not care about Marine's life? Crack. At such a short distance, Zoan could even clearly feel the whistling cold wind coming towards him, but the attack stopped. Akiji's attack stopped, and he stayed in the air with Moonwalk, living up to his previous laziness, and said coldly, Put down Doberman's heart, you are provoking Marine. Ha ha ha. Zoan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Although he was weak and pale, Zoan's momentum became stronger and stronger. Marine? It was you, Marine, who forced me to the other side. Since you forced me, don't blame me for any action. Die. Zoan laughed cruelly. Go. He casually threw the heart in his hand to Doberman's position, but at a speed visible to the naked eye, the heart began to swell violently, and the terrible breath had begun to brew in it. Admiral Akiji, it's up to you to choose next. Zoan smiled and waved his hand, saying teasingly, Little devil. Akiji cursed. Ice cube, brutal pheasant mouth. The tremendous cold air gathered on his right arm, and Akiji rushed towards Doberman's position quickly, but the next moment the ice on his right arm was quickly released, forming a magnificent ice bird, which flapped its wings in the air, and the terrifying impact force came directly to his face. Zoan, who had long been weak, was blown away by the impact force, and all the places where the ice bird flew over were condensed into ice. Don't think that this is the end. Akiji, this is just a gift. Zoan shouted madly, supporting his weak body. Room air explosion. Boom. Advertisement. The terrifying explosion rose into the sky again, and the huge explosion collided with the ice bird. Time seemed to be still at this moment. The terrifying impact force was frozen by the ice, and the ice bird was also covered by the explosion, forming a beautiful spectacle like ice sculpture. This is far from over. Zoan raised one hand, breathing deeply, forming a posture like throwing, and roared. Room explosion, 500,000 tons, gravity spear. Search. The purple spear that had condensed into a corpse was covered with black light and pierced by Zoan. At the same time, Zoan looked at the heart floating in the air, hooked his palm, and sneered, Explode. Boom. An even larger explosion enveloped the entire warship. Akiji's figure rushed out of the explosion, and in an instant, he wrapped the heart that was almost shattered with ice, firmly blocking its injuries. Damn it, I need to treat it immediately. Akiji clearly felt that the heart in his hand was collapsing rapidly, and every minute and every second would form a violent impact, and he cursed secretly. Explode. Zoan's voice came into Akiji's ears from afar, and the black spear whistled. Dodge to save yourself and the warship behind you. Two choices have fallen into Akiji's mind. Ice Age. Akiji raised his hands and scolded in a low voice. Crack, crack, crack. The ice covered the sky in strands, but the purple light suddenly became extremely lush. Boom. The ice fell on the damaged warship, and Akiji's figure slowly emerged. His abdomen was pierced, and blood dripped on the warship. Ahem. Read books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 046. Gulp. All the remaining Marines swallowed their saliva, looking at Akiji's bleeding abdomen and the bloodline at the corners of his mouth, and asked nervously, Akiji, Admiral, are you okay? Should we give chase? That guy could actually hurt Admiral? At this moment, under the stimulation of Zoan's continuous massacres, even the elite-trained Marines were crazy, all looking at Akiji's eyes in horror, staring at the two ships that had already gone far away. No need. That kid won't be unprepared. Akiji waved his hand and said calmly, Boom, boom, boom. A series of earth-shaking explosions, 7 or 8 deep pits were blown out in the sea, and all the remaining Marines on the warships were terrified. What if he and others had caught up just now? Then at this moment, everyone shuddered, not daring to imagine the result. Akiji froze his injuries and whispered, Let's go. Return to Marine headquarters and rescue Doberman immediately. Yes, Admiral Akiji. The only Marine left on the Marine warship immediately began to get busy, while Akiji stood on the warship with a frown, secretly sighing. Such a devil has appeared out of nowhere. This era is about to change. Master, master. Monet looked at Zwakong, who fell directly on the deck, and said nervously, I'm fine. Just a little too much physical consumption. Zwakong waved his hand and said nonchalantly, That's good. Advertisement. Monet let out a long breath and immediately adjusted the direction to leave, ready to leave to the prepared position. Is this the strength of Marine Admiral? Zwakong opened his palm and looked at the purple space that ordinary people could not see, whispering softly. He had exhausted all his physical strength, and although he seemed to have no injuries, it was actually repaired by the op fruit. Otherwise, Zwakong would be covered in injuries at this moment. However, even so, he only caused damage to Aokiji, and it could not even be called a serious injury. It seems that I am still too weak. The plan needs to be advanced, and the training must be more strict. Zwakong thought firmly. Search, search. Suddenly, two sounds of rushing out of the sea suddenly came, and two figures rushed directly onto Zwakong's pirate ship. Immediately following, dozens of voices rushed out in succession, which were the fishmen team led by Tiger and Jinbei. Master! Sugar, who was already looking at Zwakong nervously, immediately called out his puppet knights, surrounded Zwakong, and shouted nervously, Little Sugar, don't worry too much. Zwakong did not get up, but just held Sugar in his arms and comforted her softly. Search, snowflakes drifted by, and Monet condensed into a corpse in front of Zwakong. The wings condensed from snow on his back were slowly fluttering, ready to attack at any time. Tiger, do you want to attack? Monet scolded in a low voice. The slender white jade fingers were clenched, and the snowflakes were entangled and fluttering around the fingers, as if Tiger said no and would immediately attack. Tiger ignored Monet, just glanced at Zwakong and said in a low voice, You killed Arlong as the eldest brother. I should have sought justice for Arlong, but you helped us stop Aokiji and escaped from the pursuit of Admiral. I must repay this favor. All the fishmen had no intention of refutation. Although they were all staring at Zwakong angrily, they did not object to Tiger's words. Their respect for Tiger was deep in their bones. So what do you want to say? Zwakong rubbed the soft little body of Sandang and asked lightly, Hand over the training method of fishman karate, and you can leave. This is our only condition, Tiger said firmly. Advertisement, fishman karate. Zwakong chuckled and glanced at Monet. Monet was very understanding and snowflakes fluttered on his body. The training method of fishman karate fell down, but no fishman dared to come forward to take the book. Tiger, let me ask you a question, Zwakong suddenly said with a smile. You say, do you know who I am? Pirate. Zwakong laughed arrogantly. Ha ha ha. Yes, I am a pirate. Do you think I am a pirate and will hand over the things I have robbed? Or are you fishmen all idiots? Zwakong said in a mocking cold voice. Damn human. You are shameless even though I gave you face. Brother Tiger, kill him. Shut up. Tiger roared to stop the fishman's anger, and said in a colder voice, Human, do you really want to be my enemy? Zwakong smiled disdainfully, and just stood up slowly. The meaning was self-evident. The atmosphere between the two sides immediately became tense, and the fishmen stared at Zwakong angrily. Zwakong smiled lightly, as if he was trying to make these elite fishmen in front of him like ants, and the snowflakes on Monet's body fluttered even bigger. Read books every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 047. Swish. Snowflakes drifted by, and Monet suddenly disappeared. Suddenly, Monet's figure appeared in the air, and he clasped his hands together, and the snowflakes died. Wind and snow. Hum. With a light hum, Jinbei, who was beside Tiger, took a big step forward, posed a Zhongquan posture, and suddenly punched the air. Tanka Wawa Zhongquan. The powerful shock wave presented a 360-degree attack without dead angles, forming a very perfect defense. The wind and snow that attacked the entire fishman team were easily blocked by this punch. Don't think that you can be the king after eating Logia's devil fruit. You are still far away. Jinbei clasped his hands together, posed a karate posture, and said lightly, Search. The snowflakes drifted by again, and Monet had already come to Jinbei, saying coolly, You don't need to talk nonsense about this. Snowblade, Shanhua Zhongquan. The snowblade covered with armed colors brought a sharp killing intent, and even brought fluttering snowflakes, and the fist covered with armed colors brought a more terrifying impact. Bang! Advertisement. The two collided, and there was no winner. The impact made the two retreat 3 steps in a row. The weak fishmen around were almost blown away. Zhuokong, holding Sugar and Tiger, seemed to not care about the fight between the two and looked at each other calmly. Some skills. Jinbei didn't even change his posture and still said calmly, "My master is a very demanding person, not to mention that you don't have this little skill. How can you follow my master's steps?" Monet said softly, not asking, but asking himself. Jinbei will be Shichibukai in the future, but now he is just a younger brother of Tiger. Monet has good qualifications. Snow Fruit is also a Logia. Although it is a relatively weak Logia, under Zhuokong's strict training, the power it exerts is absolutely amazing. The two have their own strengths and weaknesses, and they are almost the same. What will happen in the future depends on the efforts of the two. Tiger, I'm in a good mood today. I can cut off one arm by myself, and you can go away. Zhuokong was very arrogant when he opened his mouth, but the confidence in his words made people believe it, and he said very arrogantly, "Little ghost, are you kidding?" Tiger's temper is considered a good fishman, but he was ridiculed by Zhuokong again and again, and he still couldn't help being angry. The anger was in his throat, and he said in a low voice, "What do you think? Brother, kill him. He is just a waste now. Brother Tiger, kill him. Kill." Finally, some fishmen couldn't help it, jumped up, and rushed directly to Zhuokong. In a moment, dozens of fishmen rushed over directly, looking for death. Little Sugar suddenly rushed out of Zhuokong's arms and said in an angry voice, "Huh." Advertisement with a light shout. Little Sugar's speed was extremely fast, completely surpassing the speed of these fishmen. With bursts of rising white smoke, dozens of little bear dolls appeared on the ground, and all the fishmen, including Tiger, seemed to have no reaction at all. "It's really a heaven-defying devil fruit." Zhuokong shook his head and said with a sigh in his heart, "The childlike fruit is definitely one of the top paramecias. Of course, the side effects are also extremely great. Don't look at Zhuokong's very strict training of Sugar. In fact, Sugar grows very slowly, which is a disadvantage. The childlike fruit gives Sugar powerful abilities, but also makes it more difficult to practice than ordinary people. This is also the reason why Zhuokong always holds Sugar, more to protect Sugar. If that's the case, then don't blame me." Tiger didn't react at all, still said coldly, "Fishman Karate, secret, shock sea fist." Tiger used the most common moves of Fishman Karate. A drop of water appeared in his palm and suddenly wrapped around his entire fist. It vibrated violently. He suddenly threw a punch, and the air seemed to shake violently. "Is Little Sugar ready?" As if he didn't see the attack coming, Zhuokong lowered his head and looked at the Sugar in his arms, asking gently, "Yeah." Little Sugar nodded obediently. Room, stamina exchange. Zhuokong hooked his finger, and the purple space enveloped the two. A faint heart suddenly appeared in their hearts. After exchanging with each other, the originally exhausted physical strength was instantly restored, and Little Sugar fell soft in Zhuokong's arms, unable to move at all, and closed his eyes in a daze. "Cute girl." Zhuokong rubbed Sugar's little head and said gently, "Master." Monet forced back Jinbei's attack and said anxiously, "Not good." Tiger immediately felt a sense of panic and said anxiously, "Leave, immediately, abandon the ship, leave immediately, quickly." "Wanna leave?" "Tiger, have you asked me?" Zhuokong said coldly. His palm was raised, and the purple space immediately enveloped the surroundings. Zhuokong's whisper was like the whisper of a devil. Room gravity space. Reading is fun every day during the 11th. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Advertisement. 048. Tang Chao Wa Zheng Quan. The same punching technique in Tiger's hands had a completely different effect. The terrifying shock wave immediately roared up and actually blocked the gravity impact that was equally blind. "You're quite capable." Zhuokong did not attack again, but just hugged Shatang and smiled. "Master." Monet immediately floated back, took Shatang from Zhuokong's arms, hugged Shatang gently, and said softly, "Master, is Shatang okay?" Zhuokong shook his head and whispered, "Nothing, just overworked and fainted. Fortunately, I have recovered a little, otherwise Shatang's body would probably be directly hit by fatigue and die." Room, stamina exchange. It is a trick developed by Zhuokong that is equivalent to room, life assembly. It can exchange the physical strength of both parties, but the premise is that both parties must agree, and both parties must be able to bear it. In other words, if the exhausted Zhuokong exchanges with Shatang, I'm afraid Shatang will be directly hit to death. So Zhuokong recovered his strength for a moment, and because he didn't exchange all of them, he was able to maintain this point. Go, Tiger said solemnly. Boss Tiger. Brother. Advertisement Jinbei looked at Tiger's solemn expression, then looked at Zwakong's appearance and shouted firmly. Listen to me, go. Leave immediately. Yes. Although they were unwilling, all the fishmen quickly jumped back and floated into the sea. Under Tiger's order, they didn't even want their own boats. Of course, for the fishmen who are called the darlings of the sea, the boat is not important. They only use boats because of their large population, otherwise they would walk directly on the seabed. Do you really think they can escape? Zwakong turned around and looked at Tiger, sneering. The sea is like a mother to the fishmen, Tiger said firmly and proudly. Boom. Unfortunately, before Tiger finished speaking, the sea suddenly exploded violently. With a loud bang, the huge water waves rushed up almost half of the fishmen, and everyone was broken limbs, and the powerful life of the fishmen gave them even greater pain. Brother Tiger, help! They struggled violently, but they could only close their eyes forever in pain, and their bodies twitched and fell into the sea. Heske, these bastards ran really fast, and more than half of them escaped. Zwakong curled his lips in disdain and cursed. ***hole. I want you to die. Tiger roared in anger. Like a beast. 5,000 watts of punch. The powerful chi covered his palm, and with the black hockey covering his body, Tiger suddenly rushed up like a red lightning. Just let me see what kind of ability the so-called fishman hero has. Zwakong smiled evilly. 100,000 tons. Boom. The fists intertwined and collided, and Zwakong could even clearly hear the sound of his bones being overwhelmed. Such a punch was almost as good as Admiral Akiji's attack. After all, Admiral Akiji was a Logia user, and his physical skills were still a little worse than Tiger's. Not bad. Not bad. The power of fishman karate is really good, Tiger. Come on. Zwakong laughed excitedly. Without using any devil fruit ability, Zwakong actually raised his hands and rushed out madly. The pitch-black hockey was contained in Zwakong's body. As the battle intertwined, a faint black light appeared behind Zwakong. Bang! Another confrontation. Tiger was actually knocked out. Zwakong stood in place, with 6 hideous black limbs extending from his back. He laughed cruelly. Haha. Haha. This feeling is really great, Tiger. Keep going. Advertisement. Is this guy crazy? Tiger frowned and thought secretly in his heart. Brother Tiger, you can leave now. The brothers have almost left. Suddenly, Jinbei's head popped up above the sea and shouted loudly. Okay. Tiger immediately gave up the intertwining with Zwakong. Although he was very curious about Zwakong's situation, he immediately jumped into the sea. In fact, Tiger was also very confused about what was going on with Zwakong's limbs at this moment, but Tiger's thinking also restricted him. He just thought that Zwakong had developed new abilities for devil fruit and had no other ideas. Want to escape? Zwakong looked at Tiger's figure and sneered. Ahem. Just as he took a step, Zwakong was shocked, and a strong sense of powerlessness immediately surged into his heart. The continuous battles had completely exhausted Zwakong's physical strength. It's really uncomfortable. But even so, Zwakong still smiled. Room air bomb. You still die. A ferocious laugh came from behind, and Tiger and Jinbei felt the terrifying impact behind them at the same time, and both were caught in the violent impact. Reading books every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 049. Pa. Zwakong collapsed directly on the boat, breathing heavily, his whole body weak and powerless, unable to get up at all. Master, master. Monet hurried over and shouted nervously. Ha ha ha. Zwakong, who was about to fall asleep with his eyes closed, was woken up again by Monet helplessly. He said helplessly, I'm just tired. Let me have a good rest, okay? Monet lowered his head shyly, and his cheeks turned red. Hoo-hoo. However, Zwakong couldn't take care of Monet's situation at this time. He fell into a deep sleep, fighting Ghost Spider, Mole, Doberman, Akiji, Tiger. After a series of 5 battles, Zwakong couldn't hold on any longer. Although Op Fruit prevented Zwakong from being injured, his physical strength was completely exhausted. If he didn't rest, he would really kneel down. But, Monet suddenly said in a low voice with a helpless look on his face, What should I do? Holding a completely asleep little girl in his arms, and lying under him was his important master, a sister and a master. Monet really wanted to cry but had no tears. Advertisement, I must ask the master to give me a raise. Otherwise, I will go on strike next time, Monet said helplessly while muttering. He lifted Zwakong up with one hand and held Sandang with the other hand. After working for a long time, Monet finally reluctantly put the two people in his room. Masters, is really big, so big, Monet thought shyly while steering the rudder. Because of distraction, he almost bumped into a passing sea beast. Fortunately, the terrible bloody smell on the boat made the sea beast dodge immediately, and Monet was completely in a daze, and he could not forget what he saw when he changed clothes for Zwakong just now. 9,998, 9,999, 10,000. Zwakong's muscles were rolling all over his body. He was only wearing a pair of exercise shorts and was doing push-ups on the deck. However, from his shaking arms, it was clear that Zwakong was not just training this time, but also putting gravity on himself. After the training, Zwakong breathed heavily. As for the method of recovering fatigue, it was no longer useful. As Zwakong became stronger and stronger, the effect was getting lower and lower. Master is really working hard, Little Sugar said with emotion, holding his little bear doll and lying comfortably on the recliner. This little girl. Zwakong looked at Sugar helplessly and said with a pout. Turning around, Zwakong looked at Monet's figure and saw that Monet was also training hard. During this period of time, Monet's training level was also strengthened several times. Obviously, the powerlessness in this series of battles also deeply stimulated Monet's heart. As for Sand Sugar, Zwakong had given up completely. This little girl couldn't be strengthened much no matter how she was trained. It was better to let her roam freely. Advertisement Zwakong had no idea of conquering the forces, but it would be good if he could let Sand Sugar turn into a bunch of dolls to be used as puppets or low-level combat. If you don't spoil your own children, do you want others to spoil them? Master, your bounty is out. Monet suddenly came over with the new bounty and said interestingly. How is it? Zwakong didn't even think of looking up, but just asked lightly. Devil, Zwakong offers a bounty of 250 million. Op fruit user. This person is jealous and cruel, and can escape from Admiral. Snow Girl, Monet offers a bounty of 45 million. Snow fruit user. Logia fruit user. Demon Child, Sandu offers a bounty of 90 million. Childish fruit user. Extremely terrifying ability. Listening to Monet's description, Zwakong looked up at Monet's unwilling look and couldn't help laughing. What's wrong? Is it because the bounty of little Sandu is higher than yours? Humph. Marine and these guys are really short-sighted. I only have half the bounty of Sandu, Monet said unwillingly. It's because my sister is too weak. Really, sister? You can't keep up with the master's pace if you continue like this. Sandu raised his head and patted Monet's thigh, although there was nothing. He walked to Monet and patted Monet's thigh, saying very distressedly, Little girl, I think you are tired of living? Monet said viciously. Really? Zwakong shook his head helplessly, and the two women were tossing together again. I don't know who Sandang learned from, but she always likes to ridicule her sister. There is a ship behind the master, heading here. Monet suddenly stood up, squinting her eyes, and said solemnly, What does it have to do with us? Zwakong said lightly, That ship seems to be a slave ship of celestial dragons. Monet suddenly said after observing carefully for a moment. Celestial dragons? Zwakong made a move and said interestingly. Monet nodded and said, And they don't seem to have the idea of getting out of the way, and are rushing towards our position. How can the master solve it? Reading is fun every day on the 11th. Recharge 100 to get 500 VIP points. Recharge now, activity time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement. 050. Celestial dragons. Their status in this world is absolutely supreme. As long as you provoke Celestial Dragon's naval headquarters, they will send the highest combat power admiral to capture them. This is definitely a nightmare for 90% of the people on the sea. If it was the previous Monet, he would definitely feel fear, but now Zwakong has even beaten Admiral. As the saying goes, Monet is not afraid of relying on others. Anyway, his master is still there. What is this girl thinking about every day? Zwakong looked at Monet and thought helplessly. Master, make a decision, Monet suddenly said with great momentum and determination. Zwakong shook his head and smiled evilly. Monet, do you think we pirates need to fear anything? What if fear? Monet scratched his head and said strangely, Since celestial dragons are here, then let them know that there are some things they can't afford to provoke. Zwakong sneered and said repeatedly, Master Ibnad Saint, there seems to be a pirate ship in front of us. What should we do next? The captain, who was like a lackey, said nervously. He couldn't help but be careful. The man in front of him who looked ugly and looked like a fish tank was one of the most noble celestial dragons in the world. If he was not careful, he would be dead. Huh, pirate ship? Just blow them up. They dared to stand in front of me, Master Ibnad Saint. Ibnad said very arrogantly. Yes. The captain naturally didn't dare to have any meaning and hurriedly said respectfully. Advertisement. After saying that, he was about to leave to deal with the next thing. Suddenly, Ibnad stopped the captain's action. Wait, I want to go with you to see how those lowly inferiors who dared to stand in front of me were crushed. Ibnad suddenly said. Yes. The captain said hurriedly. He began to prepare nervously, and all the etiquette was done to the ultimate, fearing that if there was a little problem, he would not see the sun tomorrow. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the cannon was rumbling, and a snowflake suddenly passed through the air, and Monet soared into the sky. Along with the snowflakes, all the shells were wrapped in snowflakes in the air and slowly fell into the sea. Oh, Logia's demon fruit power? Ibnad suddenly showed an excited look and said interestingly, Yes, sir, this person is called Monet, and he is a wanted criminal with a reward of 45 million baileys. The captain immediately turned over the news of Monet in his brain, and he just saw the reward order today, so he reported it immediately. Not bad. Not bad. This woman is wanted by this, sir. Ibnad smiled with obvious excitement. Stop the shelling. The captain shouted immediately. After stopping the bombardment, the captain jumped up and landed directly on Zwakong's clothes. As a captain, the more important thing is that as the captain of the Celestial Dragon's slave ship, he is not only good at flattering, but also a first-class player in terms of strength. In addition, as a lackey of Celestial Dragons, the resources he can get are naturally not comparable to ordinary people. Monet streaked a beautiful light in the air and landed on the side of the captain. He glanced at the middle-aged man and said coldly, The guy who looks like an idiot is Celestial Dragons? Hole. How can you? A lowly be sage like you, mock Lord Ibnad Saint. The captain roared immediately. Bang. Advertisement suddenly. The captain only felt an uncontrollable huge force pressing his head directly to the ground. At the same time, his limbs seemed to be separated from his body, and a faint voice came to his ears. Room cut. My limbs, I remember. You are the Op Fruit's ability user, Devil's Wakong. Let me go, otherwise Celestial Dragons will never let you go. The captain looked at Zwakong's young and handsome face and suddenly remembered something, but he still roared threateningly. Threatening me? Zwakong sneered. Room heart cut. The captain's heart fell into Zwakong's hand. He squeezed the heart in his hand slightly, and the captain immediately let out a miserable old dog-like scream. In the intense pain, he soon begged, My lord, my little one deserves death. I'm just Please let me go. After the intense torture, the captain finally realized that this guy was completely crazy and begged immediately. Zwakong sneered disdainfully. If he was not still useful, he would have killed him directly. There was no point in keeping such a lowly guy. Tell me what the ship behind is for? Zwakong said calmly. Sir, this is a ship that transports the heavenly gold collected from East Blue because of Master Ibnad Saint's celestial dragons and the few slaves he captured. The captain said everything he had immediately. Slaves? Heavenly gold? Zwakong smiled evilly and thought, Although I am not short of money, it seems unreasonable not to grab such a money jar. Reading is fun every day. Top up 100 and get 500 VIP points. Top up now, event time. October 1st to October 7th, advertisement.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.